Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
It's got Star Trek, Episode 17, 8 in Arcadia Ego, Part 1, or TNG-2, Android Boogaloo.
I'm beginning to feel that all we do these days is say goodbye.
Yes, but this time's worse, because you're dying.
You go ahead. I'll join you.
I'm torn. You need protection now more than ever.
The XBs need your protection much more than I do. And you must try to get the defensive systems here back online.
But I may never see you again.
Well, that's true of any two people who are saying goodbye.
Picard.
I am very, very proud of you.
Keep saving the galaxy, Picard.
That's all on you now.
I'm glad you said you took a lot of notes because it's not that I forgot to take notes. It's that I was just so enraptured in the show that I forgot for like the first 10 minutes, and then I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna watch the show and enjoy it.
Well, I usually do 2 watch throughs. I do like the one where I don't do anything, and then I do another one where I take notes.
That's what I was trying to do. I watched the first show. I watched it through the first time, enjoyed it, and then I was like, okay, now it's the note-taking time, but I forgot.
Oh, it was that enraptured.
That enraptured.
So I guess that speaks to the episode.
It does. So that's the, what's the episode? How do you pronounce it?
Et in Arcadia, Ego?
Et in Arcadia, Ego.
Part 1.
Which is the name of a painting from the olden times. This is why I should have taken notes. I totally fucking forgot. Yeah, it's an old painting, like, I don't know, Renaissance painting or something. I don't know if it means anything. It's some dudes by a tomb in paradise.
Mm-hmm.
If that holds any particular meaning.
It's by the guy doing what in paradise?
It's like, I think it's 3 dudes chilling by a tomb.
By a tomb.
But it appears, I think it's supposed to be a depiction of a tomb in paradise, so that it's a reminder that even in paradise there is death or something, like, I don't know.
So I guess like the synth planet Coppelius.
Synth planet
Coppelius, which is the 4th planet in the Julian system.
Peter Coppelius.
I guess that's like the great, wonderful, neat place, and there's doom inside because not only are the Romulans attacking, but there's something more sinister also going on.
I think there's a million sinister things going on in this episode. But okay, I guess we should start off with first. Sadly, Jesse couldn't join us tonight. He had to be called out of town, but he will be back with us ASAP for the next episode. So we miss you, Jesse. We'll lay in some tracks of Jesse saying funny things, and then you can pretend like he's here. But he'll be back with us next week.
So, Jesse, what do you think?
I don't have a prolapse statement.
Fascinating, Jesse.
All right,
Jesse.
so that was Jesse right there.
Yeah.
And we're talking about et brute, et cardio,
et al in Arcadia, et in Arcadia Ego Part 1.
Et in Arcadia Ego Part 1. Star Trek Picard on the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
When did shows start doing the thing where they had the actors say the previously on this show, in the beginning?
Lost, maybe?
That's what I was thinking too. That's actually what I wrote down.
You were so excited about it.
That was because I was like, maybe, yeah, because I feel like Lost is the first time I ever heard that. But as it goes, obviously, the thing that you think is the first time that did that thing couldn't have been the first time that thing happened.
Probably not. One would expect that another show had done it in the past, and we beg and demand that our listeners write in with any information about shows that had done that in the past. But I do think it was lost, that certainly in the popular consciousness, partly because if I recall correctly, the Lost convention was that the person giving the voiceover was, at least very often, was the focus of that particular episode that was
Which
coming
was
up.
not so much the case here.
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
This was Rios actor.
Yeah, this one, it seems more like they've been rotating through having different people do it.
But Lost, if it was a derivate from another show, if another show integrated Lost, that's some.
Are you just making some calculus
It's
jokes?
just some calculus. Yeah,
It's fucked up, man.
That's fucked up, man.
Hey,
Can't
with
be
all
doing
the
that.
shit going on in the world, you got to be joking about calculus.
Yeah, calculus. And then what was she talking about? The calculus. Soji had some shit she was talking about at the end about the calculus of life and death. Something.
Okay, so
And-
calculus joke warranted.
Yep. It's
All is forgiven.
All is forgiven. So the chronoton field integrity at 90% and holding is what was happening when they were going into the thing.
Yeah.
So the last episode, he was talking about chronoton fields be damned and all that shit.
Cromulent fields.
Cromulent-
What he was saying last episode, I think there seems to be a little bit of confusion online about this, which perplexes me in this case. Soji was about to fly into the Borg transwarp conduit in the last episode, right?
Real quick, the quote was, "No chronoton field, gravimetric shield be damned," or maybe it was gravimetric shield be damned.
It was
I don't know.
gravimetric shear.
shear.
Damn,
Oh,
which is
wasn't
like
shield?
No, it's a shear, which is like
Oh.
an aeronautic term about
Yeah.
wind shear.
Yeah,
in an
yeah.
airplane, right?
Yeah, fine.
Gravimetric shear, presumably
I thought it was shield.
shear in the gravitons or something like that. But the goal of that was not to say
graviton
they
field.
couldn't do it. The goal of that was to say, Soji, you can't just fly in there without considering and compensating for
Yes,
these things.
right.
So I know some people I saw online were like, well, he said you couldn't do it. No, he flew through the No, he didn't say you couldn't do it. He said you had to know what you were doing. He's a pilot. Just because she's like a clever android doesn't mean that she was going to take account for these other things.
Yeah.
So presumably he did.
Well,
and
yeah,
they
I-
got through pretty safely.
I figured the idea was it's like, this is really dangerous. The odds are against us. And they're like, don't ever tell me the odds. And they go in and all right. It was that kind of deal. I think he said no chronoton field. And then they said chronoton field integrity at 90%. I think last episode he specifically said, though, no chronoton field, implying that there's not going to have a chronoton field.
No, implying that she wasn't going to have the knowledge to turn it on.
Oh, I see.
And
So
then
it's
while
like,
flying through, it had gone down to 90%.
so basically him being like, you're going to do this and you don't know about that. You don't know about this. You
Yeah,
don't know about that. But you're not
exactly.
even going to think about that shit. And so, yeah. And so it went down. So we don't know what a chronoton. Well, I'm not going to speak for you. I'm going to say that chronoton field is different than a shield somehow.
It is, of course. Chronotons probably related to time distortions. Somehow.
Of course. I thought there's tachyons. Does it help with tachyons?
Yeah, tachyons too. Tachyons are more timey.
More timey, a little more timey.
Particles that go backwards in time or something like that.
Is one of them a little more spacey and one of them is a little more timey?
Yes, but pretty much. Pretty much that's how it breaks
It's like
down.
old spacey and new timey.
I'm old spacey.
And I'm new timey.
All right, yeah, we almost got that. Jesse's not here, so it's throwing off our rhythm a little bit.
New time, old timer, new time. Yeah, a little bit, right? But we're working with it.
We're getting there. By the end of the episode, we will be there.
It feels a little weird. It feels like one of your toes has been. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, slowly removed.
Yeah.
in the night and without your notice.
Yeah,
You just
and
wake up and a few toes are missing.
Yeah.
How'd that happen? There's just smooth little nubs.
Not that Jesse is a toe. I'm saying
No.
Jesse's.
It's an analogy.
Yeah, it's an analogy.
It's an imperfect analogy at that.
It's like we're all leaning. I'm leaning. I feel like I'm leaning in too far in some direction, and without Jesse. So,
Yeah.
anyways, he's a good guy.
We're gonna soldier through.
Yep. So there we talked about chronotons, the Coolian system. We don't know what chronotons are. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what chronotons are.
And it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's literally a made up thing.
Yeah. Real quick, when near the end, when the synths, this is skipping way ahead, but when the synths handed Raffi that do gadget device,
Yeah.
and they're just like, use your imagination.
Kestra.
I feel like that was what Kestra.
Kestra. Remember last week or a few weeks ago when the episode when they were on the planet with Riker and Kestra Troy Riker gave the compass to Soji and said, "You just have to pretend it works."
Okay.
And I made the point there that I think that's going to come into play later, and I think we're seeing another example of that because they've given a device where they say, just use your imagination, like it's some sort of a magical Willy Wonka, like, you know.
So you think that's going to come into play? The way I saw it, and I'm sure there's a good possibility it does come into play, I thought it was like kind of like the writers poking fun at technobabble, just being like, this is a ridiculous looking thing. Just forget about it.
It could be both, because probably what'll happen is it'll turn out that
some kind of mini MacGuffin.
It is a MacGuffin, I'm sure, but it's either going to fix the ship or it's going to fix Picard's brain abnormality, or it's going to fix Hugh. It's going to fix something. Like something's going to be fixed with this thing. It's not for nothing. It's the Chekhov's thing. Whatever that thing was called.
The Chekhov's box, the cat box, the one with about the cat in the box that they don't know exists or something because it doesn't meow.
No. Chekhov's gun, right? The concept that if you show a gun in the first act of the play, it has to go off in the third act of the play.
Okay. It wasn't like that cat that meowed in the box.
No, it wasn't like the cat that meowed in the box and was simultaneously dead and alive.
That too. Real quick, speaking of the compass, I meant to mention this last time. She pulled out that compass and it didn't do anything still. Was it just a symbol of like trust in yourself or something?
Well, okay, so it depends, because a lot of people online were saying, hey, she pulls out that compass and it pointed right at the transport conduit, right? And some people said, that's cheesy and dumb. Fair point. Okay, maybe it is. A lot of Star Trek is. However, a transwarp conduit, even though it is an imaginary construct, it does look like a roiling, boiling rift of energy in the universe. Yeah. One presumes maybe there's a magnetic field along in there with the chronoton waves and the gravimetric shear. Again, who cares? It's a dramatic device, you know.
I was wondering how a compass can really break. I guess unless the little stick that holds it kind of gets
I think that is a more relevant criticism, because I agree. It's kind of like,
if it points at anything, it's going to work.
I mean, I don't know. And plus, magnetic fields, like a compass is it like planetary? It's not planetary specific, but is it more used, like on some planets, maybe it's not as useful if they have like weird rotating magnetic fields?
In which case, the compass isn't broken. It's just not calibrated.
It's just a little bit crazy. And she got that, Kestra got that compass from Captain Crandall, didn't she? Was that the implication?
Oh.
I can't remember now, but I kind of have this vague recollection that the compass was something she got from Captain Crandall, and we still don't know who the fuck Captain Crandall is.
Right. I'm starting to doubt that we'll ever find out.
I think we will, but maybe it's going to be a second season thing, or maybe he's going to swoop in with Troy and Riker at the end, although probably not. My guess
Han
is...
Solo, or Han Solo style. Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, so there's some potential connections.
But Captain Crandall told them where the planet was.
Yes, he did. And he also is an old man who's hanging out with what appeared to be a 13 or 14-year-old girl and with emotional problems.
And Riker and Troy, her parents are just like, he's a weird guy.
He's a weird guy.
Yeah.
We're fairly certain he's not molesting our daughter.
But he's crazy.
Yeah, he's a kooky, crazy guy. That's what the whole point is that it was just clear that something's going to happen there. I hope it. I mean, I couldn't care less when it happens, as long as it happens. We got to find out about Captain Crandall. It does not have to be this season. It could be something they save for the future seasons to tie things in, you know.
I always wanted to get a cat and name it Crandall. Seriously. Thought that would be a good cat name.
Any particular reason why?
I don't know. I just got really into the name for some reason. I just liked the way it's a cool name that works for a pet, because I don't actually know anyone whose first name is Crandall.
Is it a first name? In this case, it's a last name.
Right. Yeah.
Crandall.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I've never known anyone with the last name of Crandall.
Are there any other names that you're quote unquote into?
If I had like a guy cat, it was Crandall. If I had a girl cat, it would be Miko.
But Miko, is that a Japanese derivation?
Well, I think Nico means cat. I think Miko was the name of like some.
No, Neko means cat.
I thought it was Nico.
Neko. Mineki Neko. Like the good luck cats.
Well, how is it spelled?
I think it's Neko.
Oh. Well,
it's got Japanese.
Well,
with Dan and Pat.
Well, I'm ignorant then, and I just pronounced it wrong.
Mitsubishi. So the Captain Crandall stuff is clearly, regardless, that's going to come up. That's going to be resolved presumably one way or the other another time. However, so getting back to the opening sequence, right?
Yes.
Because there's a lot that went on just like all in that because of course they come out, there's some chatting, then the Romulan, Narek comes out, and they fight with him for a little while. Picard gets to make a little moral point.
Before they do that, it's she comes out, Agnes comes out, and it's almost like reminding the audience that she murdered someone because she goes, "What happened to Deep Space 12? Am I still under arrest?"
Yeah.
Because you would never know it based upon how they treat her.
Yes.
It's almost as if like it never happened, or she just like bumbled some heist or something.
So
Bungled
this
some
is
heist.
an example of
I noticed a little turbulence, so there's still that comic relief in her too. Like that, I noticed a little turbulence.
Well, I mean, she was crying underneath her desk.
Yeah, in a comical way, though. It was kind of comical.
Yeah, semi-comical.
Yeah.
But this is something where, in some ways, Picard, like Discovery, they've moved a little bit more in for lack of a better term, the realistic direction, sort of just a little bit more grounded character motivations and things like that. So in some ways, they've done that. But they've also retained a lot of Star Trek tropes in a number of ways, technobabble and sort of and morality plays and things like that.
I like technobabble.
Oh,
just
me too.
Poking fun. Even as a wink.
Oh, no. As especially when it's kept when it's got its place and it's really awesome, and that's part of what makes Star Trek.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's another thing that's happened a lot in Star Trek, where Star Trek characters in the past have murdered people or worse. Well, not worse. I mean, potential for sexual assault and things like that, and gotten away with it. And everyone's like cool with it. I mean, Worf kills.
Yeah, that was the first one.
Worf kills a dude. He just takes off. He's like, Picard is like, no, you can't go kill Duras, and Worf is like, oh, I'm just going to take this off my communicator. I'm going to put it on your desk. I'm going to go murder this asshole, and then I'll come back, and technically we're cool, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, this one seemed... So, I mean, I guess on the one hand, you could say, she was mind controlled. Not mind controlled, but she was mind poisoned or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, Picard himself was like, you need to go get tried for murder.
Yeah.
And that was like, he's like, you need to confess to fucking murder. So whether or not she was controlled or not, Picard believes she's a murderer.
At least at that point in time.
At that point in time, maybe he did some more, soul seeking and learned about what did her in.
Or he thought about the concept that again, as we mentioned last week, Commodore O, the head of Starfleet security, shows up at your bench and tells you something. Not only gives you this information that freaks you out and convinces you that what she's talking about is correct, but she, in fact, has some form of authority. You might not be in Starfleet, but she is presumably somebody you're like, I'm going to listen to. So she could argue that she was just following orders.
Right. You can definitely argue that. I definitely don't deny that. But from what is Picard's point of view? Do you think he,
Well, he states his point of view in this episode, which is when she's talking to Soji. Remember, a little bit later in the episode, Soji is saying, like, after her encounter with Narek, where she starts to realize she sort of has a homicidal reaction. She really wanted to kill Narek, and she's talking to Picard, saying, I didn't think about, before when I knew Jurati had killed Maddox, I couldn't imagine how she could do that, how she could kill a person, how she could have that feeling in her. I couldn't imagine it. And now whatever. And Picard was, I forget exactly the phrasing, but she was basically like, she felt she had to do it or something. And Picard was like, did she feel that it was the right thing to do? Or did she feel she had no choice?
Yes,
and he was
that's
making
true.
that distinction, which is that's the whole following orders dilemma that, frankly, some would argue we're probably people are facing in today's day and age in the United States as well as other countries. But certainly this has happened before with the Nazis and previous incidents in the U.S. Army, like during Vietnam. The My Lai massacre and things like that, where the argument that following orders does not justify things like murder, right? Because if it's an illegal order, you're not supposed to follow it, even if the result is the end of your career or potentially even the end of your life. Now, that is a heavy fucking cost to maintain that honor. And I think that's part of what Picard was trying to get across to Soji, saying, are you willing to make that sacrifice to do the right thing? Because that's when you know that you're in the right, is that you are actually willing to do. You will go through with the sacrifice because it is right, even if it means your death.
So at the same time, though, on the other hand, if you don't take that sacrifice, you're saying that if you don't take that sacrifice and you follow orders to murder that someone, you're supposed to, they're pitiable in a sense still, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think they're pitiable, but the question is it's a judgment call as to whether or not, in this case, as you noted, it is peculiar to a degree anyway, that Girardi is basically, for the most part, especially Rios, people are like cool with it, even though they 100% know she straight up killed a dude.
Okay, first of all, I mean, I guess, do you at minimum put her in the brig or something like that? Or like, can you trust her at that point? Because they, not only that, but they have her fucking working the hospital again, or not the hospital, you know, the medical war. What do you call the medical place? Sick bay. Couldn't think of that fucking word that's so prevalent in Star Trek. Sick bay. She was the one working sick bay when Picard got knocked out, and she woke him up and found out about his brain disease or whatever. So like she's the one with the most medical training, and with the power out, there's no hologram. Yeah, so I guess she's the most qualified, and you can make that argument, but it still just seems kind of like, man, I mean, whether or not they're pitiable is one thing, or whether or not you're like, okay, we all make mistakes, even though you murdered someone, you were following orders. That's a tough place to be in. You didn't do the noble thing, but you did something that a lot of people would have done. Yeah. On the other hand, do we trust you in the hospital again? Just a simple practicality, or is the practicality of needing a doctor really that much greater, I guess, in that situation?
It's a good question, and you know, Picard, having been in command, I think he understands some of the, you know, complexities here, even if he might fall one way or the other. I mean, consider Sisko. Sisko killed a Romulan senator with the help of Garak. I mean, you could argue, he could argue certain levels of ignorance and stuff, but the fact is, as Garak himself stated in that episode, in the Pale Moonlight, Sisko knew exactly what he was getting into when he walked into Garak's shop and asked him for help.
That was like some like Black Ops kind of stuff, right?
And Sisko is responsible. Like, fundamentally, he is responsible. He didn't pull the trigger. It's not like Girardi. He didn't watch over the guy slowly dying. But he's responsible, and he's not the only one. I think most of the Star Trek captains, and frankly, most of the characters, to one degree or another, have behaved in some way that we might, in today's day and age, find less or more difficult to forgive in the long term.
Well, fair enough. I think maybe there's just no time to waste on the story with it, but maybe there should have been some aspect of her maybe showing some remorse, not just overtly saying like, I'm sorry the whole time, but at least some sign that the way she's dealing with everything else is tainted by, she's tainted. That was so stupid.
Balloon knot.
Balloon knot. Oh, yeah.
Cat flap.
The rusty sheriff's badge.
Ugh.
Anyways,
gross.
Uncalled for. Vulgar. You're vulgar hosts.
Quit talking about Fox News.
Yeah.
All they do is talk about Fox News all the time. These guys. These
fucking. So it seems like the way she deals with things should be sort of like seen through the lens of her also being kind of like fucked up, that she killed her lover. You know, she murdered her lover.
That's an argument weirdly in her favor. That she was willing to do that. Like, whatever she saw was so mind-shattering that it was willing for her to overcome her presumed great care for this person.
Right. Well, I was just saying, like, the way, but she should, like, her character, I feel like, shouldn't be so plucky and you know, funny for the rest
I think that you make a good point that the constraints of the new form of storytelling, the serialized and the limited episodes, probably do play a factor into that, and that some of these things, some of these important character moments that would be better drawn out over maybe multiple episodes or portrayed a little differently. And plus, on top of it, they aren't going to Deep Space 12 anymore. They had to take this detour. You know, they're going straight to this business. So that's another factor. Now, you could argue they could still throw her in a fucking closet, you know, and give her some food and water, but whatever, you know, I think partly with the Girardi thing is they appear to me to be setting her up for probably a sacrifice.
Yeah, I was thinking, because if it's not a sacrifice, then it is just another just like shallow flip-flop on her part, basically. Yeah, you know, clearly it's not that. I think it's undoubtable the way she acted that scene towards the end and all that. I think that well, we can get to it in a second, but I think that she's got a plan,
And
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what that is, and it seems like it'll involve some form of sacrifice. If not her life, then something.
It has to be sacrifice, because if it's not sacrifice, then it is just being like, how could you be so fucking...
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, how could you be so fucking stupid for like letting her get away with this shit again, and like
Yes.
her being completely just like, well, before I was killing because I was afraid of the synths, and now I'm killing because I saw some moles on Soji's face, and I'm killing because I love them now, you know?
I love those
Because
moles.
they're so beautiful.
Oh,
It's such
the
a
shape
work
of
of art.
those moles.
Ooh, those moles.
Yeah, so this is what happens when Jesse's not here. Just an FYI. We'll be back to normal next week.
That's a filler.
All right, so the other thing, just to they've done a really good job in these last 2 episodes of just hitting us with repeated iconic sort of images and some concepts, but really these images are really impressive. And that 1-2 take of Rio saying that's unexpected, and then just seeing the massive fucking Borg cube just barreling out of the
Yeah, that was
conduit.
cool.
That was super
And,
wild.
and it made that awesome sci-fi noise. It's like... It's like that sci-fi robot noise.
And with and the great thing is I remember watching, being a kid, being 10 years old and watching the best of both worlds, and of course being blown away and it's amazing, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't have the HD widescreen surround sound insane subwoofer, and so when the Borg cube comes through, the people are coming out of their rooms being like, "What the fuck is going on?"
something awesome.
Shut up. You gotta be quiet. I can't hear the rumble.
I don't know if this is cheesy, but I like it anyways. It's the Battlestar Galactica style shaky space camera zooms
and stopping and starting and like flipping around, the ship's flipping around and stuff. I thought it was cool. Why not?
It's cool, right?
It makes
Exactly.
sense.
Why not? It's funny, the idea of like to be simulating a person holding a camera in space exactly how they would on Earth. Like those things happen
I know,
when a person
right?
is running around with their normal Earth clothes on with a camera, and this is like, how does that translate to being in space and being a camera person like that? Doesn't matter. It's just
it is funny.
It's just
a good
kind
point.
of out of place and weird, but that's not even a criticism. It's a funny idea that it's just funny how things come to be. Funny. That things, they decide that they carry that over into space, and it's kind of makes a connection. It's relatable in a weird. It makes things a little relatable.
What it is
and put it in context. Or
what it is
understanding.
it's filmic language, right? So we have over the years. When film first started, all they did was sit the camera up, these massive cameras, and they pointed it at people with the occasional cuts here and there. It was effectively like filming stage plays, In some cases, that's literally what it was. But over time, especially after Citizen Kane, right, Orson Welles and all that, over time, people started to develop a language of film so that a close-up meant one thing, a super wide shot meant another thing, an angle this way, shooting from down low, shooting from up high, making the good guy be all small in the background while the bad guys are like looming in the foreground, making them look more menacing. These are all thousands upon thousands of techniques with the video and with the audio and the color tinting and the music that are all a language that has evolved to mean certain things, sometimes in an arbitrary way. We're just sort of taught by watching movies that's what this means. That's what to expect. This is when to expect the shark.
I was watching a documentary about cartoons, like the Warner Brothers cartoons and stuff. And of course, there's practical stuff, like they had gloves because they couldn't differentiate them when they went in front of their face otherwise.
Yeah.
But the one that was more telling was like bad guys always have sharp teeth.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like their
It instantly conveys a massive amount of character information without saying anything and without the brain really having to do anything. And that's what that camera action is doing. And I heard a few people complain. They say like, "Oh, I guess we're watching Battlestar Trekklactica now," which is admittedly a funny way to it's a funny insult. Okay.
Battlestar Trekklactica.
Trekklactica, lactose. Lactose intolerant.
Lactating
titty caca.
Yeah. That's gross.
Cat flap. Balloon knot. So
Rusty Sheriffs.
But anyway, so these are different things, and I don't think it's bad that Star Trek is being influenced by Battlestar Galactica, because guess what? Battlestar Galactica did some very innovative things.
I agree.
If those innovative things stayed locked in Battlestar Galactica, that would be stupid.
Unfortunate.
That's not how art works. You're supposed to, combine and recombine and reformat and evolve stuff, and that's really great. And it's not like all of, of course, people may, there's some other superficial similarities in that there's questions of like what it means to be alive, and there's android
that's like the universal kind of.
Yeah.
That's
and
like one of the universal storyline.
I mean, that goes back to the Jewish golem, which they reference here.
Right.
In this episode, she said, you made a golem, which is the old, there's various versions of the golem myth in a lot of cultures about creating something out of clay that you basically insert a spirit. Sometimes it's a malevolent spirit for revenge but
that was just her sort of criticism on Soong's work, because it's like she was like, are you making something in like completely inanimate, just this weird thing just come to life by magic? And he was like, well, no, that's why I need you. Because he was talking about he was what was the fucking word? Anyways, basically, Soong was saying that
substrate.
Substrate. That's what I was looking for.
Guy.
Yeah. So Maddox was the guy who made all the inside goop and all the stuff that works.
Maddox was the substrate guy. Soong was the body guy, as he said.
Soong was like the real doll makers. That's all he did.
Well, and I was actually it's an interesting thing that you bring up, because I was unsure how to interpret Girardi's statement at that time. Because she said, "Oh, you made a golem." My initial thought was that was just a term of art among android people. Like a golem is sort of an empty shell body, and then it's waiting for something to be put into it, right? Like a mind to be put into it, effectively, a mind or soul, whatever you want to call it. Their equivalent, right? But the second time through, I was thinking like along your lines, like maybe she did mean it with a little tinge of like, what is this? Is this just a, I don't know. I don't know which way it was.
Well,
intended.
that's why I was also confused, because she seemed like she was serious, like he was going for something very specific that he wasn't going. I don't know. Yeah, it was kind of open ended, but so the substrate guy, I mean, I took the substrate, that just kind of meant the goop that makes things work, basically.
Yeah, so like your brain is a substrate in a sense, right?
Yeah.
In other words, what the consciousness lives in.
It's consciousness, but even like the proteins in your body and stuff like that, like all the stuff that goes
Maybe
into
my guess, my interpretation, I could be wrong. My interpretation was he was focused more on, he was basically saying, I can't do the brain bit.
Yeah.
Or I can't do like the good brain
Well,
bit.
I wonder.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, where does that end though? At the cerebral no, wait. What's the cortex is the one that makes you have reason. That's at the front, right?
That's the frontal lobe.
Frontal lobe, cerebral cortex, and then there's the
cerebral cortex is the whole thing, I think.
Oh, what's the bonular fulcrum?
Yeah, no, you got it right. It's called the brain's balloon knot.
No,
the cerebellum.
Cerebellum. No, is that what I was thinking? I'm so ashamed of myself. So the spine part at the back of your head that they talk about in zombie movies, where it's like that one's still activated, but the rest of the brain is dead. That's how they can move around and eat you.
Hit them in the balloon knot.
But it's basically the one that makes you have all those basic, like how to teach it. It makes you breathe, and
it's the gallbladder.
The gallbladder. Yeah, exactly. The lower intestine.
It's the anterior Balzacian lobe.
Some people's lower intestine is located in their mouth. I was wondering if the substrate would apply. This is going like asking silly questions, but would the substrate apply to that? You know what I mean? Because I was thinking it would extend beyond all the thinkety thoughts and go into all the mechanisms that actually got shit to work.
It might. I do know that the term substrate is often used in AI circles and in artificial intelligence in general, because the idea is, one of the debates is, can you in fact have a human-like consciousness on a silicon substrate? In other words, a non-biological substrate. Can it exist digitally?
Yeah, I think that's
and there's a debate. I don't know. Because that's not my field of expertise.
No, I mean that's
so I couldn't say. But I do know
that makes more sense.
Yeah,
it makes more sense for sure.
Interestingly enough, to point out that his name was A.I. Soong.
Oh, I didn't even fucking.
Yeah, his name was what was it, like something Inigo Soong? But what was it?
Do you think the writers were being cute, or do you think Soong actually named his son that? As if there's a difference.
I think it's lore. Yeah,
lore. Not that lore.
No. I think it's that lore aged up, and he doesn't know how. And he got together with Maddox.
I thought you meant like it's lore, as in it's part of the surrounding history.
I think it's fucking lore. Data's brother lore, because and I, even if it's not, all right, let's say it's not. Maybe let's say I'm just having a little crazy bit of fun here.
Gooba doop doop doop.
I'm just flooping and flopping, going crazy on Snake Leaf, and I'm saying this, but let's say that's not the case. Whether or not it's the case, Brent Spiner played him with lore-ish tendencies and personality traits. Now, here's the complicated part. One of the things that complicates deciding whether or not this is lore or not is because...
Wait, you're saying Jonathan Frakes? What?
No, Brent Spiner.
Brent Spiner. Okay, I'm sorry, Brent Spiner. I kept thinking, you said Spiner, and I was thinking Riker, and then I was like, Jonathan Frakes. Sorry, Brent Spiner... was suggesting this? Like, doesn't he know?
No, not the actor. I'm saying watching the performance. I only knew this
you're just saying by the performance.
I literally saw this yesterday.
Okay.
So he's introduced as like, ooh, haha, it's Brent Spiner. Mm-hmm. Who is he? Who is this person?
Right.
And he introduces himself as Data's father's son, basically. Effectively Data's brother, right? He's already putting him in the position as being Data's brother because they share the father. He's just claiming to be a biological version.
And then there was that quote he gave about like Soong. My dad always said, what did he
made Data. He only had me. He had me, but he made Data.
Yeah.
So in other words, and he said it with bitterness.
Yeah.
And the thing is that exact same logic could apply to Lore. Lore had the same bitterness. We know Lore had the same bitterness. He was bitter about Data. He was bitter at the attention that Data got, right? And so that's why I totally see it plausible that this character is in fact Lore in some form who has gotten together with Maddox, and he doesn't have the skills that he doesn't have the skills, just like Data tried to make Lal and that didn't work out. Lore also has been unable to do it, but maybe with Maddox's help, that's how they were able to do something. But there's just something suspicious about the guy right from the get-go in his mannerisms and all that. But the point I was trying to make earlier was that the difficulty in using that as evidence to say this is Lore is that all the Soongs, even the Arik Soong, I think was his name, we met in Enterprise, who is like Soong's like great-great-grandfather or something, who was a geneticist. He also acted kind of like Lore. Like Lore is modeled after Soong, and Soong is kind of like weird and a little assholey too. Not as evil as Lore, but this guy had that set of personality traits. He clearly didn't have, like, obviously not the Data type, and he didn't really have his own kind of thing. He kind of was acting a little bit Lore-ish.
Soong is kind of an asshole too, but maybe not in the same way.
Yeah. All the Soongs, they've always
Soong's
portrayed
a little
them as
less
being
bitter. Soong's a little more like kind of like better than you, pompous kind of.
Yeah, but there were a couple things that stood out. This guy, Soong, AI Soong, artificial intelligence Soong, which is another clue that pops out at me. He was really on the point repeatedly about like, us humans gotta have drinks. You old humans.
Oh, he thought he was being like, I am totally human.
It was a little obvious.
I am not.
But
these are what humans do.
But at the very end of the episode, and I caught this on the second viewing, and I rewound it and I caught it again, and it could be nothing, but at the very, 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 very end of the episode, before shit finally goes down, Picard gives his little speech about the, I will advocate for the synths, and Starfleet will listen to me.
Yeah.
And then
it seemed like a delusional kind of.
It was a little bit, and then AI Soong said exactly what I was thinking, which was, no, they won't.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't listen to you before, right? They didn't listen to you when the synths were whatever, And Picard gives him this look, and he gives him this look that was kind of like, wait, how the fuck did you know about that? Or like, what do you know exactly about that?
Yeah.
And now,
true.
granted, it is something that is potentially easily knowable on the galactic boob tube and whatnot. So I'm perfectly happy to not count that as a clue. And we're just having fun now because the fucking last episode's coming up, and who the fuck knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
They've really set up a mystery where it's like, what's going to happen? But anyway, those were a couple things. There's a couple things throughout the episode that when I watched it the second time, I was like, there's something weird going on with this dude. Not to mention the fact that he seems to be very close with the the one
Sutra.
Sutra. Sutra has a little bit of a lore-ish thing going on too.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out what her motivations are, because if, to what you say, she has a lore-ish thing going on with her. Why? Because at the end, she lies to people about who killed
Yes.
the Saga or whatever.
She
her
did
name was.
exactly what the Romulans did with the humans. She engineered a scenario
Right.
that would get. It was a political scenario. It was like politics is convincing people, and that's what she needed to do. She's like, I need to get all these people scared so that they will vote my way. They will go with my plan. So she engineered a situation where Narek was able to kill one of them, and so she could use that as an excuse. That is a lore-style manipulative thing to do. If her deal was simply, oh, we're going to call the advanced synth race and exterminate all the biological life, she didn't need to set that up necessarily. She did that because she felt she had to convince people to be on her side. Otherwise, it wasn't going to work because Picard or somebody else would be like, no, that's an assholey thing to do.
And she calculated something, right? She figured, well, this not enough that I've talked to these people. I know that somehow, but that's guided by fear, right? Her decision to do that, you could say, was guided by fear, which is kind of like a lore insecurity kind of thing that he was doing.
Yeah. On the other hand, she didn't seem that scared. She seemed like almost to relish the opportunity to.
She did, but she had to have. She even said out loud to everyone, it's like, in front of everyone, it's like, we can't have Picard here because he's going to convince like all these people that I may be wrong, and that's not a really strong case you're making for yourself when you publicly say
That's some absolute candor shit.
Yeah, that is some absolute candor shit, and that's why their society all works out, right? Because like, everyone gets everything on the table, but they sort of like didn't care that she said it here, right? So they're not. Maybe they're just like,
and they looked. I found it's interesting how they opted to direct, and they directed these actors playing these various androids in very specific ways, and in that scene they looked confused and perplexed and.
So she had to have done some calculating to figure that me doing this alone isn't going to be enough. Yeah. Picard has the power to maybe overcome that. Yeah. So she wanted to ensure a victory instead of saying like, this is going to happen. She's trying to up the odds in her favor.
She's forcing the hand, basically.
She's forcing the hand. She's upping, but it's still upping the odds in her favor, turning something from probably maybe going to happen to more probably going to happen by shutting away Picard. Yeah, she's getting a better deal for herself. That's kind of an idea based in fear. It goes to what Soji was saying before about, in the end is whatever the quote was. It was like, in the end, is killing all come down to fear, or is it survival? So is there a difference? How can So she was basically she's not sure that she's going to win on her own. So I guess there's a little sort of fear on her part that she's not going to get it. And what is her motive? What was Lore's motivation?
Yeah, he was mostly just jealous.
Right. So what's her motivation? I mean, do you think it's just survival for her?
She could just be mad that humans killed her sister. Could be as simple as that. It could be more that she actually does. I mean, to give her credit, it could be that she just actually has decided, look, this is what we have to do to save the people I care about. These are the people I care about. I don't give a fuck about all these, pink monkey old people. I want to help my own kind here, and I'm willing to sacrifice literally everyone else in the universe if it means this group of people here is there. Or it could just be her own self-interest. Maybe she just wants to stay alive. I don't know. Although you could argue that she would just get on the ship and flee then.
So there was this idea of this sort of higher synthetic power or whatever, that there's beyond space and time, whatever that means. We're talking about some stage of enlightenment or something like that. So maybe it's just, it might not just be about survival. It could just be about she wants something. She wants this higher power. She wants more. She wants to experience that kind of nirvana or whatever you call it in robot land, robot nirvana. Yeah. Well, and so that would be based upon she's dissatisfied with where she is now. So she's trying, pure self-interest to get into this sort of robot heaven or something, feel more powerful. I don't know what her robots do.
If A.I. Soong is Lore, he would have the exact same motivation. Now, evidence against A.I. Soong being Lore is it did appear that he had a sincere interest in keeping Jurati around. He had some vested interest in protecting her against the other androids and keeping her free to work with him. with the implication being that he's old and wants to transfer his mind into that golem body, right? Presumably, one could easily presume that the whole deal is he wants to live forever, and when the evil synth people, or whatever, the higher synth power comes, that he wants to be able to go with them. So if he's in a synth body, then he'll be able to stay alive. So that's that. In all likelihood, that is actually the plot that's going on. But on the other hand, if it is lore in some sort of disguise, then, well, he might possibly want to destroy all the biological life that's caused him so much trouble, and merge with these AI super cross time, cross space people.
Yeah, I think it makes sense that he wants to sort of, he probably wants to be be with her romantically, I'm guessing. And he was talking about her being the mother of the children.
Yeah,
it's kind of narcissistic. Is this to say like the thing that you created that with your hands is your child a little bit, because it's like, yes, you make children, but it's of a different, obviously it's a different sort of intention and different process going on. And it's the difference in process is not superficial, it's like this.
Provide more details. Let's start with the traditional process. Could you explain that to me?
Okay.
When a daddy penis and a mommy vagina love each other very much.
Yeah, the old in and out. So, like, creating a child through sexual intercourse is, there's some of that happens that is kind of out of your control, right? You're just doing something and hoping for the best. And yes, how deep you want to look into that, you could say the same thing about making something, with your hands or whatever, like a toy or a robot or another life. I'm not talking about that. The point I'm getting at is it's just like, I'm so good at making this thing that it is my child. I don't know, man. It's just a strong word for child. It's sort of like, he's like, I am my own child. I love myself,
I think yes, I think there's narcissism. I think narcissism involved in that. I also think that it's probably a benign narcissism in many cases.
Yes,
in cases though, when there's a Soong involved, there is probably a heavy dose of narcissism, because creating life is by definition a narcissistic enterprise. You could argue that's true of just being regular old parents. There's a certain narcissism to it.
I'm not denying what you said about Soong. It probably has no unify, or you sort of singular, that's the word I was looking for. It doesn't have a singular effect on anything, but it's just kind of a reflection of, it's like, yes, everyone maybe feels that a little bit, but to him, it just seems, like you said, one of Soong's personality, it's just kind of one more thing. It's like, man, this guy is really, because he seems all better than his dad. He seemed, at first, until the end of the episode, he seems better, but then it's like,
One could argue that the primary difference between Data and Lore was that Data lacked a sense of narcissism. He had, if anything, the opposite. He had a certain almost a synthetic version of anxiety, because he had such a desire to be more human, yet contained all these, frankly, many purposeful impediments to becoming human. They were purposely put there because Lore was demonstrably more human in nature. But that didn't work out because and of course you can retcon things and motivations change over time. But I certainly think at least the initial concept of Lore was that him having emotions, giving human emotions to that type of brain on that silicon positronic substrate, there was an incompatibility there, something that caused Lore, like those emotions to be so heightened, or the wrong emotions to be so heightened, especially if they were modeled after Soong. You take somebody with Soong's personality type and then you map that onto this positronic brain, and it did react and manifest in bizarre personality traits of narcissism and egomania and megalomania. Data didn't have that. Soong's solution may in fact have simply been, I'm going to make the same thing, except I'm going to remove emotions, but specifically I'm going to prevent the concept of self-interest and narcissism to exist in Data.
So you're saying like he had supercharged emotions just like he has supercharged strong robot powers. Like it's hard to sort of figure out the degree to which he's going to have something.
I could see that. It's they do a similar thing. They hint at a similar thing in the Amazon series The Boys, which is fantastic, an amazing show.
Is there season 2 coming out soon?
Season 2 is coming out of The Boys. It's a fantastic program, but one of those concepts is, you're born with superpowers. If you have an infant with laser eyes, that is going to be a problem because they won't be able to control it yet, and there's an incompatibility with certain sets of abilities and normal human emotions. Or you can make that argument anyway, is what I'm saying. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting because I want to know how long this particular story will continue. Is this going to be largely resolved by the end of this season and then jump into a new story or a related story? Or are we going to get sort of an initial resolution but it's going to be effectively the same story, but just rolling into sort of the next act of the story, the next sort of chunk of it after this initial thing is resolved? Like, will we see these synth creatures? Or, as some people have suggested, and I kind of like this theory, that just as we predicted that the admonition that the Romulans saw, that they were in fact misunderstanding it. It was almost like it's a miscommunication. And we see evidence of that this week, because then, Sutra says, "Oh, I totally understood it." But that could be a double fake. It could turn out that this is not in fact a beacon that synths create to get saved. It could be like fucking the carousel in that movie, Logan's Run, where they go, where they have the carousel, where like at a certain age they go and carousel.
I still haven't seen Logan's Run. I should see that.
It's not spoiling anything to tell you that, by the way, yes, definitely see it. It's a great movie. Like, it's a weird ass 70s movie. There's a lot of boobs in it, which, take or leave. But it is a surprisingly interesting movie. But the core premise is that everyone has a little crystal in their hand, and when they turn, I forget, 25 or something, they all go to carousel, and everyone's told that when you go to carousel, that you're going to be transferred up to like the next level of existence, and it's a paradise. But then, of course, they find, the main characters find out that it's actually basically just a big blender, zapping everybody and killing, and it's a population control mechanism. And some people online, on your Reddits and on your Facebooks and all that, they have suggested that the synths could be being tricked, that the android community could be being tricked, that in fact what the admonition is a trap for synthetic life, that once they make the beacon, that makes it so that whatever the trans-dimensional people come and they fucking either enslave them or vaporize them or kill them. And one argument for that is, in the admonition, they're all like, "We're watching you. We're waiting for your signal." And it's like, wait. You're watching us and you're waiting for us? Like, if you're watching us, can't you just like kind of come when we need help? Like, why do you need us to fucking build some shit to contact you? So there could be a double reversey flippy coming.
Yeah, I would. When the synths say that the Romulans got it all wrong, though, I mean, maybe it's the kind of thing where they had the premise kind of backwards, but it still kind of results in the same thing, right? Either way, it results in the synths wanting to kill organic life. So from the Romulans' point of view, it's what? The Romulans going, "Watch out for these synths. They're going to come get us after they get to a certain point." And the Romulans go, "Oh shit, the synths are going to kill us. We better kill them first." And the synths, when the synths see it, it's from our people, and they're telling us that the only way to evolve, it doesn't directly say only way to evolve is to kill the humans, but it says something like the only way to evolve has to involve the organics' death. And so in the end, it's like Romulans still have a right to be like, shit, they're going to kill organics.
But that does not, I mean, it doesn't negate the idea that there was a miscommunication, right? Mm-hmm. And I still feel very strongly that this is the direction they're going to go to, because the line is, your evolution will be their extinction.
Right, yeah. So that doesn't directly say any kind of thing.
That literally, if you think about it logically, if humans, right, evolve and create synthetic life and then merge with synthetic life, look at what we already see Soong, AI Soong, or Lore, whoever, but AI Soong, if the idea is that he wants to put his brain into that golem body, that's what we're talking about. And if that's if the idea is, that's extinction in a technical sense. It's not extinction of humans. Right. It's the extinction of Homo sapiens, but not of humanity.
Right. So it doesn't. Yeah. And so it doesn't directly necessarily mean the synths have to kill people. There could be a cooperative sort of ends to this. Humanity often talks about like, a God. It's like, oh, there was a God that created us, and one day we'll ascend to enlightenment or heaven. This kind of has the approach backwards, because in this way, we're the gods, right? The old like, oh, we're becoming gods, we're too powerful. But this is sort of saying that we are gods, we create these beings, except it's not so. And these beings are the ones that ascend into enlightenment, right? And this is going to lead into what you said, I think. Usually it's like, in our system, it's like, oh, well, our God is already enlightened and we'll reach enlightenment. It never really says, it depends on the religion, I'm sure, which it's like, how much is God always going to be more powerful than you? I guess. Oh, that because he's God and you're not, even if you're dead. I don't know if some people
that's
believe.
from the Judeo-Christian version of it.
Yeah,
because there are other myths where the gods create people and then the people kill the gods.
Yeah, and there's other ones where people ascend to be a god and it's just a big circle or something like that.
The Klingon philosophy is exactly that. It's that the Klingon gods created like Kalis, and then they turned around and murdered the gods and took their place.
It's like a more hardcore like mythology, Greek mythology kind of thing.
It is pretty cool. So let's
so wait. What I was saying though is what I was getting at was gods. So we're the gods. We create people. These creatures, or we create these beings.
We call them creatures.
We call them creatures. These beings.
You're synthist.
I'm not a synthesizer.
You're a synthist.
Synthesizer. I'm a synthist. Sympathetic synthesizer. Sympathetic
sympathetic synthesizer.
Sympathetic synthesizer.
Sympathetic sympathizer.
Synthetic sympathizer. A synthetic sympathizer. So
synthist.
When you're in this case, so we create these creatures and they're going to ascend into heaven, but we're not. But at some point, right, it's a means for us to ascend as into enlightenment is by creating these creatures that ascend into enlightenment, and then we get sort of absorbed into them by putting our brain balls inside their robot things.
But let's break it down, right? Because that's following one trajectory, and I think we have three potential trajectories here.
It's both a situation where something's becoming eternal, right? It's like except we're not the eternal ones. We rely on the thing that we created to make us enlightened. You know?
I agree with all that. I'm just saying that only will prove true if it only proves true if what they're saying is correct. And so far, the entire show has repeatedly done two things. First of all, it gives us information backwards. So it gives us information that we're like, huh? And then only 3 episodes later, a few different other pieces of information, come together in a puzzle piece to be like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like when we learn more about Rafi's motivations, we learn more about Jurati's motivations, we learn more about Picard leaving Starfleet and those details. It's all told backwards. We don't know, why did he leave Starfleet? And we slowly figure it out. That's one thing they've done. The other thing they've done is they've repeatedly subverted and re-subverted expectations. Right. And so here's the deal.
So you think there might not be a synth sort of like overlord collective that lives beyond time and place?
There's three possibilities that make sense with the data that we've given. Forgive the pun. The first possibility is we just take all the information we've gotten completely on face value, which is Sutra listened to the admonition, and the admonition was meant for synth life, so she understood it exactly correctly, and that there is a wonderful federation of synth people who are going to be benevolent to these synths, and they're going to help them get rid of the biological life.
Right. Yes, that's
scenario. That's scenario one.
That's scenario Sutra.
I personally think that's the least likely scenario.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, okay.
So this is another case that's sort of, one doesn't convince the other, but they fit nicely together, I guess, where Jurati at the end, when she's asked if she would die for her children, and Jurati goes, yes. That's not, and she can still be good and do that, you know? Because following through with this plan doesn't necessarily mean following through with Sutra's plan.
Another example of subverting of a miscommunication. She was able to be seen as not lying because she wasn't lying.
Right.
She had a different intention.
Exactly.
Just like in the Last Jedi. Same thing happens where, they kill Snoke. Remember, Snoke is like, yes, I see you drawing your weapon, and you're pointing it at your enemy. You're ready to strike your enemy. And the joke is, of course, that was all true. It was just that the enemy was Snoke and not Rey. Okay, so scenario one is the Sutra one. Everything's taken for face value, and it's 100%. That's just the deal. And so we're going to see the resolution of that, and we'll see these evil people. They're not evil. We're going to see them help the androids, and then whatever. First scenario, I personally think least likely scenario.
I agree.
Second scenario is the trap scenario, where the synths believe that that's the case, but when they actually activate the beacon, it's going to turn out these are horrifying creatures or whatever, some force that comes through and
they have to unify against?
and is a threat to the synths. That's the argument. That's the theory being. It's not. I didn't come up with this, but I think.
But now, is there an implication as to how the organics feel about this light, or is it maybe created by organics to kill synths, or is it just something that comes after synths?
Literally, whatever.
And the organics are like, hey, we can't let that happen, or is it coming after everybody?
Exactly. It could be any of those things, but the idea being that it is in fact not. It's kind of like. You know that show To Catch a Predator?
Yeah, I've seen that show.
You haven't been on it?
No.
All right. But on that show, they go online and they bait people with something that sounds really great to them. In this case, unfortunately, it's 14-year-old girls, right? So they bait people, and then the people show up at the house, and then they get arrested, right? That's what I'm saying. This is like a universal version of To Catch a Predator, except in this case, the perceived predators are the synths, right? So whoever the bad guys are, that's one theory. I think there's a strong likelihood that might be the case, that the synths...
So you are saying it's definitely synth-focused. You're saying that it's to get the synths, not to get organics in any way.
In this scenario, let's just say that, right? Let's just say that, right?
Let's just say it.
The third scenario, I think that's a very likely scenario, especially given modern Trek and having an antagonist and subverting blah, blah, blah. The third scenario, which admittedly could be tied into the second one, the third scenario is that whoever this group is in true Star Trek fashion, like straight up Encounter at Farpoint, TOS style, it's perceived to be... Everyone's worried, is it a savior? Is it an enemy? And it turns out it's none of that. It's just some nice, benevolent, whatever. And they're all like, oh no, you all got that message wrong. Here's what that message means. And maybe that message is that biological life, by definition, will all eventually evolve into synthetic life so that there's effectively no difference. Because so much of the debate in this show and in Battlestar Galactica and in Blade Runner and a million other things is AI real life? Is it real? Is Data a person? Is there a difference, right? And this could resolve that argument by saying there is no distinction because one will become the other. That is that's part of evolution. Creating synthetic life. They are your children. They are your offspring, and that is what evolution is. It is passing on your essence to your offspring, and then over time they develop into their own thing.
And the way that I see it, I said that's what I was saying. What you just said just now is what I want to say every day.
I'm going to fucking hold you to that, dude. I'm calling you up tomorrow at 9 a.m.
What have I done?
I'll be like, are you ready? Are you ready to say it?
No.
I want to hear it.
No. What
Saturday
have I done?
morning.
All for the sake of attention.
The kids are waiting for me to make bacon and eggs, and I'm not going to do it until I hear from Uncle Dan.
The kids are crying. Why are you making the kids cry, Dan? Why don't you just stop the kids crying and do it? But when I was using words like enlightenment or nirvana and stuff, I didn't mean them literally.
No. I agree with you. I'm just saying that.
And then part of that, what I was saying is like humans create synth are the ascend. Humans join with synth to become one creature. But it's interesting the role of creator versus created, because in the other way it's like God created man and man did some shit, and then Dan died and
man creates dinosaur, woman inherits the earth.
And then man dies.
Laura Dern, also in The Last Jedi.
And so the man dies, and then all suddenly
the man.
For some reason, they're spirits and they're great in heaven, but still not as good as God somehow. Anyways, but this just makes it much more like man creates this becomes God, we become God with that thing because of the thing we created. It's a lot, it's more interesting anyway.
And it could go an Asimov sort of way and have it that whatever that beacon calls out to, it's subtle, but they make some reference to being outside of space and time.
Yes, exactly.
And the implication being, and I'm following on with what you're saying, it's similar in some ways to kind of a different presentation of that Asimov story. I think it's called the
Robots in the Gully.
It's called The Last Question, I think, something like that. But the idea is that somebody asks the universe. It's like, what is the purpose of the universe or whatever. I forget what it is. Man, God, it's unfortunate. I can't remember
Isaac Asimov. I like him better than the other one.
Well, and there's the Asimov book in there, but that's a clue. I forgot about that. She's Girardi.
Charlie Rose. Charlie Rose, is that the other one's name?
No, Charlie Rose. He got fired.
No,
he ain't woke.
No,
but Girardi's reading that Asimov story. But anyway, the long story short,
it was a joke. I know that it wasn't.
The Asimov story is that people keep asking the same
Other
question
guy.
to their computers, but the story takes place literally over eons, where it keeps dropping in, where people ask this question to the computer, and the computer is like, I don't have enough computer processing power to figure that out. You'll have to ask again. And early on, people are like, whatever. But then as it goes on and computers get more and more powerful,
I think I remember that from
still like,
somewhere.
I need more computer power. And then ultimately, at like the heat death of the universe, like when everything's all spread out and like the universe is, the implications, the universe is like become itself the ultimate computer. It's like, what is the meaning of life or whatever. And then the universe sort of restarts. That's I don't think this is that story, but I think it might be taking flavors from that story in the sense that assume that the biological life in the universe evolves into synth life, and then the synth life evolves into something beyond that on some outside plane. Once it's on the outside plane, it is now on the outside plane of the entire timeline of the universe. So it could, in that sense, be like you are going to make contact with, you're now ready to make contact with your future selves, in a sense.
Right. And that future self is it's another idea of sort of shedding your physical form,
Yes.
right? Because ultimately, I mean, why does synthetic life ultimately need any physical form whatsoever?
What does God need with a starship?
Yeah, just like that.
I need my pain. Star Trek V. We'll discuss Star Trek V thoroughly. Yeah, that's a good Shatner. Circa Star Trek 2.
Come on, Khan.
I don't believe in no-win scenarios.
So the only reason that synthetics need to be get physical is because
Physical. I'm gonna. No, you're supposed to keep talking. And I'm supposed to like
fruit.
a little bed.
It's too distracting to try to. I try to do it, but I can't because the words get all mixed up. No, it's the idea of why does synthetic life need a physical form? And so when the people get into synthetic synthetic body, I hate when people fuck up their words and then they go blah, 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 blah. I hate when people do that. They go, and when someone blah, 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 blah. It's a weird habit.
Synthetic.
So humans create synthetic life, right? And humans join with synthetic life. I'm sure for a while they would be in this physical form, but eventually, however many times pass, it doesn't need to be physical. They can just be, ones and zeros or whatever the equivalent of ones and zeros is in that time frame, which could be something totally done.
Bloops and bloops.
Bloops, blops, and blorps, not ones and zeros.
The bleeps, the creeps, and the sweeps.
I'm not even going to try to do that thing he did. It was so awesome. But yeah, so they just kind of live among space, and that's sort of outside of space and time, is they can just flit around. They can just flit around into, like, how when they talk about how the universes are they're different verses and they're just kind of bumping into each other like big amoeba blobs.
Or bubbles.
Bubbles.
I think usually they use the analogy to bubble.
They do say bubbles.
I prefer amoebas.
I think it's more like an amoeba blob because it just feels better. Because bubbles, I don't know. Well, they're strong.
Bubbles was the name of, wasn't that Michael Jackson's chimpanzee?
Yes. And so what? There's 13 theoretical dimensions. Have they gotten it up since then?
In string theory, it's 11, 13, 15. Depends on the math.
I've heard 13.
Depends on how many brains you're talking about. BRANES. Brains.
Yeah, that's what the verses are. They're just brains.
Bunch of fucking brains.
The multiverse.
All flooping and flopping and rapping.
I'm really into multiverse theory.
I'm more into holographic principle. The calculations originally developed for black holes, but that have, by some scientists, been extended to the entire universe and suggest that all the information in the universe actually exists on a two-dimensional film, like around the universe, and is sort of we perceive 3D space in that there's no actual 3D space. We only perceive it because that's the way to make sense of the data as our molecules are.
I always
around.
thought of us like a donut.
Yeah, or a donut, a toroid.
Toroid.
Yeah, some sort of toroid action, toroid universal
Multiverse
action.
theory? If you understand multiverse theory, then you would understand what I'm saying.
I agree.
Multiverse theory?
All right. So, philosophical stuff aside.
Yeah. So
obviously-
anyways, that came back to the last one of you saying the three scenarios. The third scenario being like we mold like something's. Well, we didn't say what did you didn't say what happened, what that thing really was. Did you just
my thought on the third scenario? But again, the first scenario is that it is pro synth people and they're going to come and wreck shit up in favor of the synths. The second scenario is it's actually some sort of trick against the synths, and then the third case scenario is that it's neither of those things. It's some other thing, but basically premised on the idea that Everybody fucking misunderstood this shit. The Romulans, Girardi, Sutra, all of them are like not getting the message.
Yeah, and I mean, the third one sounds the most interesting, right? I mean,
like imagine, if
the problem with the third one is it could end up also being super lame depending on how it's executed.
Yeah,
I know it's like a deep read on that one, but it's
like Encounter at Farpoint. There's good and bad, and there's some lame stuff about there, but the kind of overall floaty idea is kind of neat. Think about this, right? Star Trek 1, right? It's centered around the idea that some machine race, which may be relevant to this plot, by the way, the Star Trek the motion picture, the Voyager 6, I believe, spacecraft, which we sadly never made, but in 1979 they thought that we would have one. So Voyager 6 gets found by some sort of super advanced machine race, right? This is according to what Spock says. He mind melded with this fucking machine, which, by the way, is evidence that machines can interact with a mind meld. Right? Because I'm sure, I haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure some people will say, why could Sutra do a mind meld? And it's Star Trek.
It's Star Trek, obviously, but I mean, there's no evidence of it. It is, they can do it, as was proven by.
Well, there you go. Exactly. Okay, the very good point. First of all, it's a TV show, and they did it on the TV show, so obviously it can be done.
No, I mean,
but
anything can be done, and anything can be taken back.
If people want to have some sort of extra bonus, like justification that is in the past of Star Trek, we know on 2 occasions Spock melded with machines. But anyway, the point
I was talking about this with you and Star Wars canon, and like how the argument was, well, it doesn't really matter what considered is and is not canon, and right, it doesn't, but it is kind of interesting to think what is at least acknowledged by the entities writing it. But of course, anything can be changed. You can give Vulcans weird heads and then take them away if you want, or not Vulcans, Klingons weird heads,
etc. It's entertainment, and while yes, it's nice when things, it's always a treat when things link together and are nice, and have references that are, and they're good references that are meaningful. Obviously, that's great.
It's just more fun when the current writers sort of at least acknowledge that. But I know it's like ultimately they can do whatever.
But you also don't want to have your storytelling options ruined by being too overly constrained by them. And as Star Trek goes on, as Star Wars goes on, those constraints, if you were held to them, would only get stronger and limit dramatic opportunities. Right? So I look at everything from a creative perspective, which is I do, of course. I love when people show that respect and take the care to fold it into the story in a meaningful way. I love that. I don't care so much as long as it's not too egregious, as long as it's not something that's 100% contradictory or that totally changes the backstory. That's a little annoying. But in this case, anyway, the point I really wanted to make is imagine that machine race. They find Voyager. At that point, they think it's V'ger because there's some, weathering on this thing, space weathering. And they upgrade it and it goes back, tries to attack Earth, et cetera, et cetera. Go watch the movie. It's worth watching. Mm-hmm. On that Voyager, presumably, I think they even showed it, is probably one of those plaques that shows the sort of image of David, and I think they have a man and a woman, sort of like all standing there all naked and stuff like that. The alien would see that and be maybe confused, and maybe they come here and they'd think like, oh, these people have clothes on. They don't have clothing on, and they'll start ripping off our clothes, and they think they're helping us when actually they're sexually assaulting us because they misunderstood the message on the plaque, right? And I think there's a lot of that potential here because that's a Star Trek message, especially a TNG. That's a TNG Picard style thing, that there is a resolution that can be derived by communicating, by giving a speech, by attempting to understand, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra sort of thing. That is a repeated theme in TNG. And since we've seen these writers clearly know TNG and really know the background and are good writers, in my opinion, in terms of story structure and all that, and metaphor and analogy and all that, I see them seeing that and picking up on that. And I think that's what's going to be wrapped into the ultimate resolution of this story. I don't know if it's this season or if it's at the end of this overall story, but that miscommunication and resolving that miscommunication is what's going to be what saves the day. It's not going to be lasers, and it's not going to be other things. I mean, consider this. Some people are complaining that this Borg cube keeps being teased. We keep thinking we're going to have some like Borg uprising or 7 of 9 coming in, and every single time it happens, it's like the Borg cube gets ripped open and all the Borg get thrown out. Jerry Ryan, I apologize, Miss Ryan. 7 of 9. comes in with the Borg cube, and we're like, oh, fuck yeah. But like, she doesn't even get to fire off a shot before she's taken down by the flowers, right? So they keep subverting this idea of the Borg cube coming and saving the day, right? So I don't know. I just think it's kind of along those lines.
Yeah, speaking of going back to the part of the mind meld, so did a lot of people have problems with that? Was that like...
No, I haven't seen any problems with it, but when I saw it, I predict the problems.
Yeah, it's interesting, and because it's always been... It's like when it's not as drastic as like metachlorians in Star Wars or whatever, but it's still the idea of there was a fair assumption that this was something Vulcans can do, that just Vulcans can do. And it wasn't even like they speak a mythical language that only they speak. Well, in that case, anyone can learn that language if they figure it out somehow. It's possible. In this case, It's sort of taking this unknown and sort of adding a detail to it that sort of means like, oh, well, I guess anyone can do it. If a synthetic life can do it, anyone can do it. There is nothing mystical about Vulcans. And I know that Star Trek's not about promoting mysticism, but it is about promoting ideas that maybe aren't mystical, but are a little bit intense. They're abstract, kind of ideas.
One could argue that this is a way to actually finally resolve that tension between the idea of Vulcans, on the one hand, being paragons or representatives of logic, on the other hand, having what have heretofore been perceived as largely mystical, sort of telepathic abilities, but I think it's analogous to the Vulcan neck pinch. We've seen some non-Vulcans learn to do the Vulcan neck pinch. I believe Data figured out how to do that.
The mind meld is harder to grasp, and that doesn't mean it's any less possible. It's just harder.
It's another level up.
Yeah, it's the only reason I related to metachlorians is because it took this idea of something and made it. It didn't really limit it, actually. I guess it opened up the possibility more because metachlorians just limited to certain people.
Consider this. I think this is a very good.
I'm not comparing it in that it's bad like that. It's kind of like when I saw it, I was like, huh.
Let's think about it this way, though, right? Because you jogged something in my brain. Let's consider this.
Jog. That's how you
let's start with this premise. We'll start with the premise that Vulcans do have there's something biological about Vulcans that gives them this ability to do mind melds. Let's start with that premise, that is indeed some sort of special thing that Vulcans have, and that, it's a genetic thing. Commodore O can do it because she's half Vulcan, half Romulan, similar to how Beta Zeds are biologically telepathic, for example.
And how Ferengi need Umox.
Or how Ferengi are biologically not telepathic. Let's just start with that premise. If that's the case, why can't an android, a synthetic form of life, also have that biological characteristic? They don't all need to be based on humans, and there's no assumption that they are, in fact, meant entirely to be based on humans. These ones we see are modeled after the Soong style and sort of modeled on humans. But honestly, if it's a biological function of Vulcans, why could that biological function not be replicated the same way other human characteristics can be replicated? Just because humans have some things that the Vulcans consider mystical, like our access to, not just access, but the way we have control our emotions and some of the motivations we have. Enterprise did a good job of this. We've discussed before about how the Vulcans didn't have any real curiosity or quest for exploration. It was the humans that pushed them to do that, because the humans were like, we want to find out every fucking thing we can find out about here. And Vulcans were like, it is only logical to occupy the space and resources that are required for our people, right? That was the premise in Enterprise.
I think, yes, there is nothing that says, but it's not like, oh, is it? I guess however philosophical as you want to be about it. Is it like making an ear where you can hear things? Is it making a sense? It's like, well, if they can smell and hear, but it's still just it's still just simulating it.
If the premise is that is a biological function of Vulcans. If it isn't a biological function, if it's a mystical function, then yeah, it doesn't work.
Right.
But I don't
think there's any real mysticism. I think Star Trek ultimately does that thing where, magic is just they have advanced Wi-Fi. Like it's Star Trek kind of gives the idea that it can present stuff seemingly mystical, but it's not. It leaves the question. It doesn't bother explaining it, but it poses out there and say it's not necessarily totally mystical. Maybe something could do this, and that's why I think it's really opens a lot. But there's a difference though between data simulating life, lore simulating life. Now that's where the philosophical question of like, is there any difference? And starts what Star Trek asks, right? But that's less of a function and more of just a philosophy or a way of being. A mind meld is an actual ability to read thoughts. And so that's pretty intense.
But my argument is, again, the premise is Vulcans can read thoughts because of a biological characteristic.
Right.
If it's a biological characteristic, it is physical and therefore can, in theory, be replicated the same way hearing can be replicated, or the sense of touch or telepathy. Consider
hearing.
I mean, I don't understand why there would be a distinction, because let's take a Klingon. What if you make an android Klingon and give them the 2 hearts and the 2 penises and the 2 spines and spinal cords and all that? That is now a Klingon. They functionally act like a Klingon because they are a simulacrum of a Klingon.
Right. Exactly, but it's not. It's a simulacrum, and there's.
I'm arguing,
it's not exactly.
Let's not stick on this too much because we've talked about this forever. But like, I think we're at this point now where we'll have to figure out how to resolve this at another time.
No, and I'm not trying to. I'm really not trying to argue against about it, because I see it could just be, if we're talking about it's just a biological thing, then yeah. And I'm just guessing like, how much can one simulate? How much has to be baked into the being when Soong creates them? Soong and Maddox creates them. What can they add to themselves?
Upgraded.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
But no, the question you asked is like, yes, if it's biological, then yes, they could. But I don't think it's as polar as biological or mystical. I think there might be an in between, and that's a cop out to say. But I think it's also possible there's a third option where it is completely reasonable. It just can't be done simulated. Like, how can you perfectly? I don't know, but I don't like that idea either if something can't be simulated.
If it exists, I mean, the idea being they're recreating life, and if that form of life exists out there, why can't it be, in theory, recreated with? And we're talking about a fictional universe where they have enough sophistication technologically to create what appear to be human looking and passing human scanner stuff type androids. Why could they not potentially also mimic some of the biological whatever of other creatures?
Right. I think that's one of the options that I was going for. I see it as 3. You see it as 2?
Three buttholes?
She played the Ka'athra. It was just some kind of cello dulcimer thing.
Yeah. Is that the lute, or is that a different style Vulcan? Because Spock was always playing that lute type thing.
It looked like a lute, except
or a harp?
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. It's like
a harp lute?
Yeah, so it's like, I believe the dulcimer is kind of like harp-like. It's not the same, but I forget what that... It is like, it's like a harp that you mix with a guitar, but also just has this, I don't know, it's like you pluck it but play like it's kind of like a keytar, it's a keyboard, but it's a guitar, but it doesn't have to be, but it is, to make it easier to carry around with you. I don't know, but yeah, it was like a weird, yes, it was like you're right, it's like a lute / harp.
A lute / harp.
A lute / harp. A lute / harp.
So we've
going to GARP. Eating some carp.
We've been there and back again every place, but I do want to go back to the very opening scene.
She said Surak, and on the closed captioning, by the way, it was spelled Sarek, so I don't know if that was just...
That was an error.
On the closed captioning part?
Yeah, clearly an error, because it was definitely Surak.
Okay. Anyways, do you want to go back to the beginning?
I want to talk about the flowers, just real quick.
Oh, yeah, got to talk about the flowers.
It's cool sci-fi concept, cool idea that the flowers went up to kind of grab the ships. It's an odd thing to do. It's weird. That gets you in the mode that these androids do think differently. They think differently about design. Weirdly, their design, as much as they talk about the imperfection of organic life, it's clearly they're making a point with, it's a somewhat ironic point that their design mechanism, their design style, their scheme is very organic. Those don't look like spaceships. They look like floaty, flowery things.
I'd say you could say it's a very superficial level of insecurity, just because constantly trying to simulate life that you even want to do. You don't want to think of yourself as a tool, so you make life the tool instead or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, something
But
weird.
I did think it was really, it was cool that they grabbed that ship. It was cool that they struggled and tried to grab the Borg ship.
Yeah.
And just pull it down.
I like the size of that shit going on. Thinking about a giant fucking Borg cube size. I mean, thinking about a Borg cube is already big enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's wild.
But thinking about a flower that size is crazy. Yeah, hitting the atmosphere was awesome. It also, a bunch of cool sounds like pew.
And presumably, 7 of 9 for a great entrance, of course, when she's just kicking those Romulan bodies down.
Like a video game or an old like TV show or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's something.
Well, she kind of stood in her
cartoon.
old 7 of 9 stance at one point, where there's a stance that she stood a lot on Voyager, and when she was standing up there, she kind of took on that stance for at least for a few seconds when she was talking to Picard et al.
At all. Not.
But she's not
in Arcadia.
You know, they all look at that and they're like, "Oh, now it's broken. Oh, that's fucked up Borg Q." But she wasn't acting like that. She was acting like, "Yeah, we just got to get this shit together, and we'll, you know." She didn't say we'll be out of here, but the Borg cube can fucking regenerate, presumably.
Yeah. I mean, was it Star Trek or was it Star Wars or some other show that was talking about these ships were built in space? They were never meant to be in the atmosphere. I mean, I can't remember where some show.
It's probably both of them, actually.
Probably every show.
It was all groundbreaking on Voyager when it turned out it had landing feet.
Oh yeah, maybe that was actually where I was like hearing it.
Yeah, and I remember at the time people were all like, "What the fuck is this?"
So-
I was probably one of them. I was like, "The ship can land. What the fuck?"
So yeah, can Borg cubes land? I don't know. Who knows? But Soji somehow got to her room to look at her pictures at some point.
Yeah.
How did she get up there? I guess it was
know.
on that floor.
Android power.
Android power.
Zip, zap, zip.
Doesn't matter. But the power was working though, because they were able to see that there were 218 ships.
Well, he asked if she could route some power that way, because remember the line was, "Oh, what are they doing? Oh, they're using batteries to turn on the food replicators." And she said, "Do you need any power? Do you need anything?" He said, "Long range scanners, long range scanners."
When he said, "Brace yourselves," when the cube was coming, for some reason that made me think of Gandalf. For some reason, I don't know. It just made me think of he was very Gandalf.
Baggins.
Yeah. Yep, just like that.
I got all coroned out. Oh shit.
Yeah, so the flowers, apparently there were 15 of them. In that battle, they lost 5 of them. They had 2 days to build more, and they were able to build 13 more because they ended up with a total of 23.
Yeah.
That's some Star Trek arithmetic.
It
Star
is.
Tremither-trick.
It is Star Trek calculus.
Yes, calculus.
Derivatives and integration. Yeah, so I again, another iconic thing, and it was again, Borg cube coming out of transwarp conduit, and then Borg cube crashing to the planet with flowers flapping along the side.
That was just kind of like, interesting. Why? That's a weird choice, but okay.
They get to the android city, and it really evoked some early TNG style, the clothes, the decoration,
when
the
they're going to some
set decoration.
settlement.
Yeah, exactly. When any of a million settlements that they went to, there was just that vibe, especially that episode where, and probably this was one of the ones they were doing was, when Wesley falls into the flowers.
Yeah.
Flowers.
I keep thinking of that Simpson episode where he's like, they get trapped in a flower and then he walks out and they're like, "Wow, Dad, how'd you get out of there?" He goes, "It's a flower." I keep thinking about that. But yeah, there was.
But they evoked that kind of style of architecture and everything. So I thought that was really great because it was very Star Trek-y. I loved the look of the androids with their golden eyes and how there were different types. Like, obviously, there were sort of ranges of androids,
right.
and a lot of them were more data skinny, and some were like a little bit more human-y style.
So I was wondering on the, I didn't actually count too hard, but the whole twin thing, because if you look at it, I guess you could say Soji and Dodge are one set of twins, and then Jana and Sutra are a different set of twins, because even though they look alike, one set has gold skin, but then it's just like, well, why
sort of like the next version up or something.
Yeah, and I'm guessing when he said that's who it was, because I guess Jana must have had gold skin too.
And strictly speaking, they didn't. The talk hasn't been about twins as much as pairs.
Yeah, pairs.
And I think they use that language on purpose for 2 reasons. First of all, because you can have multiple pairs of the same kind of shoe.
Yeah, that still look the same.
Right? They're implying that something about the manufacturing process or the development process is that makes sense. The other reason I think they're using the term pairs, because twins tends to evoke similar and it's not true and it's unfair in reality, but from a literary sense, it often evokes, similar people. Whereas you have pairs, there can be some differences, and that's a subtle, and maybe I'm overworking that idea a little bit, but I do think that they're going to be making the point that there are potential differences. These are individuals. I mean, they're different people, no matter how much, some of them look like they're very similar, but others clearly go in slightly different directions. We saw differences in personality between Daj and Soji, for example.
They just go together. Not necessarily. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and Data and Lore. Data and Lore are different folks. Of course, they presumably weren't built in the same way. This seems to be a product of the manufacturing process that they're utilizing now because they cannot create it from scratch. They have to replicate what already exists. That's
maybe
at
it
least the
replicates
premise.
off each other or something.
Yeah, so some sort of mirror image type thing.
Speaking of Jana, there was the flower, but then there's that dude's name was Flower. The dude's
His name was Beautiful Flower.
Beautiful Flower. So maybe they made flowers in
Which, by the
his
way,
image.
I believe lore, I think it's pronounced differently, but lore in some language also means like flower.
Oh, really?
Yeah. FYI.
Going way back. When they stepped into the settlement town, there was some like synth Tai Chi. There was some synth ball. There was some synth 3D Star Trek chess.
Yeah, they were totally rocking the 3D Star Trek synth chess.
And Rios got to kick the ball around for a second, show he was cool. So synths like to play, sure, why not? I mean, that's what they have to have subroutines,
I mean, what else are they doing there? Just milling about? They did.
Yeah, right. You got to do something. And
I mean, honestly, like, what are they doing?
And a lot of it is for Soong's entertainment, right? I mean, he made the butterflies because he wanted to see butterflies, so he wants to see a whole bunch of people playing around.
Does he have sex with all these people?
There is children.
Yeah, but he would probably argue in that case they're not quite his children.
Yes,
it might be like on Friday nights. On Friday nights, you're not my children.
Yeah, I mean, even if you call your pets your children, you probably don't.
You
have
probably
sex.
still have sex with.
Wait,
what?
No.
Oh, I
was going the other direction with that one.
I was confused.
We haven't seen much of ancestral sex twin stuff lately, though. I don't know. I don't think they're going to approach it. I don't think they're going to talk about it.
Oh, first of all, they don't have to talk about it. I think they already made it very clear.
Yeah, but they
don't got to show them fucking.
No, but I mean, they're not going to. I think more the question is are their parents really their
Is that going to be the tag? Like next week's episode, they're going to like the end of the episode, and then there's the credits, and then there's a pause, and then there's just this like just them fucking.
Whoa, that would be pretty. It would be kind of awesome. Just to be like, yeah, there it was.
You've been Star Trek.
I knew it.
It'll be the new show on CBS All Access.
You've been Star Trek.
You've been Star Trek. Like Riker comes in and while you're having sex with your partner and like he's playing the trombone, but he's not playing it. He just sort of sticks the trombone up your butt, and then he's like, you've been Rikered.
I'd say the question though more is are their parents really their parents, or are they some other people? We don't know.
No,
I guess I guess it just doesn't matter that much. But it's still kind of like, I don't know. It's like why are they leading us in this direction then? Why are they bothering at all?
Because it's fun. It's just characterization.
No.
It's just a little characterization.
Just a little character.
Don't worry about it. It's just a little characterization. You're just gonna add some flavor. Just a little ancestral flavor.
It's like that Adam Sandler sketch on his second CD where he plays the mom that talks about just play with your car. I'm not gonna say it. It's dirty and it's weird. Just do it for mommy. It's really weird.
Yeah,
okay.
I do remember that being a weird, but it was the early '90s were a weird time.
No, it was funny. It's in a weird way. I feel weird.
You had to be there.
You had to be there.
Literally in the early '90s.
Yeah, but a lot of people
like
weren't.
with the Jerky Boys.
What was
I'm Tarbash, the Egyptian magician.
Yeah, the Jerky Boys.
Could they release an album like that today? I pull furniture out of my ass.
Yeah, some things are just supposed to live in the time they were created and not meant to be brought back. I don't know. Anything's meant for anything. So what? Maybe it'll
Jerky
come.
Boys, look it up, folks.
Maybe it'll come as a
Jerky
reaction.
Boys.
So, Soji was all like, "It's my fault. I led the Romulans right to us," and then.
The Romulans.
He goes. You can't be expected to keep a secret you don't know. Even you know. You can't be expected to keep a secret you don't even know you know. It was a little bit of Girardi's fault too. It was a little bit of her fault. She killed Maddox was like the fucking key to a lot of shit.
A bunch of other people. It was the Romulans' fault.
She killed. Yeah. It was a lot of people's fault.
The Romulans worked to find this world.
Well, but just like Soji didn't help with her stuff that wasn't really her fault. Girardi fucking straight up killed Maddox, who was her lover, but also a major key point of information that could have probably helped with something. He might have even prevented the synths from rising up against him. Who knows? Yeah. But who knows? When the synths were when they were like, all organics need to be destroyed, and Picard's like, all, meaning him. Well, what about fucking, Jurati and
Bilbo Baggins.
Jurati and Soong as well. Doesn't that imply that the doesn't that imply that the synths will kill Jurati and Soong as well?
Well, that's the thing, is that's why they were saying Soong wants to get in. The implication was Soong wants to get into the body. He needs Jurati's help to get in the body because he's a body guy and not a substrate guy. So he doesn't know how to put his brain in there without it being fucking weird.
Yeah, and so, but Sutra's plan is the straight up annihilation. So I would think that at some point Sutra would just be like, well, we said we're going to kill all people, so we're going to kill you too. Then hopefully some smarter people come around or something and say, no, don't do that,
Well, and the other thing also is that in the admonition, the presumed end result or eventual result is the extermination of the organic life, right? That follows from what was said. But if you listen closely to what it was said, it didn't imply that they would just show up and be like, all right, bam,
no, I know,
they're all fucking dead.
No, I
know what you're saying. I'm saying, like, in the case of Sutra, as well as Soji, of course, at this stage, but even Sutra, she may not, she doesn't appear to be all like, yeah, let's fucking get on this and murder all the fucking humans. She does, biological people, I should say. She does have that thing with Narek where she was all like, oh, I thought I'd just want to fucking kill you.
Yeah.
But she could also want to kill him because he killed, like, her,
she was talking about, she still was talking about how all organic life is basically the enemy, is what she was saying. So that would seem to include Soong and
But by
Jurati.
definition, she didn't just murder them right there. So clearly she has some mental... she has some lack of desire to kill Picard right then. But why? Because otherwise, you're right. Why wouldn't she just, once she made that decision, why would she not just kill all these people?
I mean, I wasn't saying just that she would kill everyone. I'm just saying Soong and Jurati think they're protected, and they're not protected.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. And that's why I'm saying, like that's why they think they're protected, because...
Yeah, they think they're protected because
they weren't immediately killed.
But that's a deception. Well, they think they're protected. Well, Picard wasn't immediately killed either. Just saying, like...
Yeah, exactly. We're saying the exact same thing, I think, which is...
Okay.
Obviously, they think they're being protected, but they shouldn't necessarily think
Right, they
that.
shouldn't necessarily think that they're being...
But in the case of Jurati, we already got the hint that she's got some alternate plan anyway, so that doesn't matter to her, right? Like,
either way, Jurati's probably going to die.
Yeah,
she has to die.
She's not caring about that right now. Soong, I guess the argument would be he's just blinded by his arrogance that he presuming he is a human Soong that he helped create these people. They're his children. They would never harm him, and that they would actively work to help him with this whole whatever. Clearly, he's must have tried to enlist their help to do this, mental substrate stuff, and it didn't work out. They don't know how to do it. That's why he was arguing for Jurati's help, and Jurati used the argument, let me stay free for his sake, because I'll help him be like you, and then you can stay together.
I think as soon as Soong does what they want him to do, Sutra will push for killing him too.
Possibly.
I don't think it'll get to that point, though.
It also depends how far they go with the quote-unquote evil Sutra thing, because... They've made her kind of like cold and fucked up at this stage.
If you say all organics, you mean all organics. Picard was even like all, and she's like all.
Yeah, but counter argument, like when your grandpa says fucking all those fucking Japanese, that
my grandpa never said that.
No, neither did mine. I had a very nice. My grandpa was a wonderful man. But the analogy is clear to you, right? The idea being World War II veteran. Says some racist shit about Japanese because he dealt with them in a certain context. That does not mean he is in fact like a murdering person or inclined to it, even if he has these focused moments of rage towards certain people. I'm not saying that's the case with Sutra. I'm just saying, like, at this stage, she is not yet shown to be like even lore level evil. She's shown lore level manipulation. She's shown a lore level coldness, but she's also, she's still arguing. Like you said, she was like really honest about like, yeah, Picard's like, he's like all novel to you and he's all convincing and stuff. Like, we got to put him in a fucking room to protect you from his words.
Yeah, not necessarily she'll kill everyone, but I think she possibly sees Soong and Jurati at least know better. Maybe they're more useful to her right now because Picard's not useful to her, but they are useful to her. As soon as they stop being useful, she probably has no reason.
Implicit in in her not just simply exterminating Picard is some degree, maybe it's a small degree, but some degree of like, no, I'm supposed to behave like in this good way. So it could be that she's wrestling with this newfound dilemma between wanting to protect her people and then actually taking this action.
I don't think Sutra's in any dilemma about anything right now.
Well, I hope she is.
She referred to the Romulans. When she was like, maybe those pitiful Romulans. She was saying that when she was talking about them trying to interpret the admonition, she was referring to them as pitiful Romulans. She already, first of all,
she's racist as fuck against biological people.
How did the admonition, did that actually change her at all, or do you think it just sort of like amplified the direction she was going? Because she probably didn't want to wipe out. She didn't want to make organics go extinct or do whatever before that.
You could,
but
argue,
she was still
exactly.
she was still had a motive. She still had a part of her that was like this kind of these, looking down on wanting to.
This is exactly what I'm getting at, which is, yes, like Girardi, she may have just been so severely, affected by the admonition that it's altering her perceptions in such a way that she's now believes in this course of action. But simultaneously, if that were the case,
so you'd think at some point she would have some moment of clarity or whatever, where she'd come back and be like, "Oh, I was wrong."
Look, she might be totally evil. I'm saying that would be the less interesting play here. The less interesting play is that she's super evil. Soji goes along with her for a little while, like Data did in the episodes with with the Hugh, with Data and Lore, for a little while. Data, they sort of like tricked him through programming.
Yeah.
And then Soji like changes her mind at the last second or something. That's what they're sort of presenting. Again, they've presented a lot of things and then subverted them. And I think if it's as simple as that, that's fine. They can tell a good story, and it'll along with the other stuff, it can still be really great. It would be more interesting and more complicated and more Star Trek style to have Sutra's characterization be more complicated than we're initially led to believe, right?
It would be nice, yes.
It's just, you could see the potential there. So I might just be speaking from the perspective of kind of hoping it goes in that direction. But you're right. It could just be that for whatever reason, whether it's the admonition or what, this is her deal now, and she is like the antagonist, or for the time being, and maybe will be the antagonist. Maybe she realizes like right before she gets blown up, but like, So we'll see which direction they end up going. I'm curious. I'm just excited for next week.
Yeah. I thought the scene where I am too. I like the scene where she was talking to Picard, about, or Soji was talking to Picard about, killing people. Obviously, we referenced this earlier. And what does it mean to, kill someone? Are you doing it out of fear? Are you doing it out of protection? Now, the direction I felt that was going when I first saw it was like, oh, previously she talked to Sutra, right? And Sutra's like, we got to do it this way. And she's like, no, we can't do it this way. No, we can't. And she's like, we got to. And she's like, okay. And so previously I thought that Sutra talked Soji into killing a bunch of people or something like that, being part of a plan to kill a bunch of people, which she kind of is, but not as directly as I thought. Before she was talking as if she was planning on killing someone, and she was afraid that she was going to kill someone. But it turned out that she actually was upset because she didn't kill someone.
Exactly.
And wasn't sure if that was the right thing. Now, she felt
bad about that.
Yeah, she felt bad about not killing Narek. Not killing Narek. And so it was kind of like, in that instance, she didn't kill Narek. Is it worse to be actively a part of an issue or passively a part of an issue, or does it really matter? Because not killing Narek, was that out of she's scared that will cause more people to die? That's fear of more people dying? Or is that fear justified and it's not fear? It's like, I have to make, this is one of them philosophical.
It goes back to what Picard was saying again, about like that in that conversation, did she feel it was the right thing to do, or did she feel she had no choice but to do it? Those are two different things, right? You might feel you have no choice but to do it, but it's not necessarily the right thing to do. You could make that argument with somebody breaks into your house and threatens your family, you shoot them and kill them. it protects your family, but you could make you might have had no choice from the perspective of protecting your family. But there's a debate about whether or not it was the right thing to do. Of course, many people would say, of course it was the right thing to do. But there's a debate. There's a reasonable debate to be had about just the concept of killing somebody for the purpose of saving others, which is precisely what Soji is sort of asking about in that conversation.
Right, sort of the needs of the many and the needs of the few and all that. And I thought it was interesting, at least for how I took it. It wasn't about an action she was going to take. It was about the lack of action. And it's like, action versus being passive or whatever, submission, whatever, passivity. So Picard also made that comment when she was talking about. She actually mentioned the calculus of life or something. She said something about that. She was saying, is it cool to decide whether people should live or die based on some greater good or something? And Picard said, depends on who's holding the knife. Yeah. So, and that's. Did you ever see that movie, Bulletproof Monk?
No, I don't think I ever saw that.
I didn't see it either. But Eric,
so let's talk about it.
Well, so Eric told me there was some scene like where Sean William Scott was being trained by Chow Yun Fat. And
it sounds like a bunch of words in my head.
Yeah, I know. And then there was
William Scott and Chow Yun Fat.
And Chow Yun Fat showed him a scene of something where
you've been Star Trek,
where some dude was standing over like some guy on the ground, and some dude was holding a gun to his head, and he was all like, it's all philosophical. It's like, would you rather be the guy on the ground or the one with the gun? That kind of whole thing. But I think Picard's was a little bit, more insightful.
Yeah, I get that impression as well.
Yeah.
Maybe we should both, for homework, let's both watch Bulletproof between now and next week.
In the future, they don't watch movies; they watch hollows.
They watch hollows. Yeah. Come on, note boy. You're the one with the notes. What's next up?
I have 11
on the notes.
I have 11 kilobytes of notes.
11 kilobytes.
Usually I have around 8.
1.21 gigawatts.
7 to 8 is usually what I have. I have 11 today. I think I was like freaking out because it's only the two of us.
Because it's barreling down, man. It's barreling down the road. We're coming into the next episode, which is going to be the last episode for a while.
When Girardi took care of when Girardi murdered someone and then was allowed to work in the sick bay to save Picard, who was like the most important person in this whole deal. She said to him, might just be a tricorder showing its age. That was definitely some kind of metaphor for, Picard, right? He's an old tricorder showing his age.
Yeah, making some bleeps and bloops.
Making some bloopity boops. He didn't know how to work that future control set in the last episode.
Do you think Girardi drives a Ducati?
Yes. I think that was assumed.
I assumed that as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I was impressed by her when she cried. When this actor, Alison Pill.
Yeah, she's great.
When she did the chin quiver.
Yeah,
when
the
she was
chin
crying,
quiver is some fucked up shit.
How the fuck do you do that on command?
She's like a brilliant actress.
Yeah, her face, she's got one of them. I used to like Janeway's facial expressions a lot, and Girardi is at least as good.
Yeah,
probably.
She's got all sorts of facial expressions.
But Girardi makes faces I don't know how to make on command, so I would say, or Alison Pill rather. But yeah, anyways.
Do you remember that when you taught me how to frown?
What? Did I teach you how to frown?
Yeah, like this. I mean, it was like,
that sounds. Like that was the day you taught me how to frown.
No, it was like 20 years ago.
You weren't the same Innocence Lost.
No, you're really good at making a frowny face, and I could not. Yeah, like that. Listeners at home, he's making an excellent frowny face.
My brother used to like when I did this.
So I could not do a frowny. There was something in my muscles. I couldn't do it. Probably because I was born a jovial person. I'm really good at smiling, even in terrible circumstances. Frowning was just not. It was not a facial expression that I was like knew how to do. And Dan was able to do this comically. Yes, I know. He's making me laugh because he's doing a comically, like a cartoonish frown, like a straight up fucking upside down semicircle fucking frown.
I think it's because the same reason my brother likes it when I purse my lips and smile. I can make a really good frowny down smile too.
But anyway, I can do it.
Smile.
I'm better. I don't approach Dan's ability to frown, but I can do it now because back then because Dan was just sort of like, yeah, just so tug down, with your muscles. I don't know exactly how, but like somehow in communicating with him, I was able to develop some skills in how to frown. So that's the day you taught me to frown, Dan.
Well, it sounds a lot less.
But neither of us hold a candle to Alison Pill.
Right.
Girardi with the Ducati.
Girardi with the Ducati. Yeah, it doesn't sound so bad when you put it like that. That kind of frowning, not just like I ruined your life. Frown. Capelius Station. Reptoids. Homicidal fungi. Hope and the odds make poor bedfellows. So it's just saying like odds are bad for hope. Don't let odds poison your hope. It's kind of weird.
It's like a Han Solo.
Just doesn't help anything.
Don't tell me the odds.
Yeah. Okay. That's yeah. Okay. Whatever.
It is probably a bit of a downer if you're about to do something and some asshole Vulcan or robot is standing next to you saying like the odds of success are 5.2%.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, why do we fucking bother then? You know what? Forget it.
Yeah. That's the more defeatist side of what Sutra was afraid that Picard was going to do by spreading dissent. Picard was doing this positive action where he's like, no, you must not listen to this.
The line must be drawn here, no further.
Yeah, like that. That's all inspiring. But the other way is more like, you're never going to do it. Both ways it causes...
Romulans are just too strong.
Yeah, both ways it just causes, insecurity and feelings of inadequacy. So saying that the odds, don't tell me the odds, it's, right. It's more like, don't worry about that shit so we can have a stronger belief in it.
Let's just keep moving on. Let's just be positive. I think it is worth referencing briefly, touching on the idea that Sutra is making this decision. She's claiming, or at least seems from her perspective, and I think she's sincere, seems to believe that this is the option. This is the option they have to take. But she does in fact have this other option. The other option is they can get on Picard's ship and go fucking fly away. And her whole thing is like, she's like, run from blah, blah. That's not, the idea of running, not wanting to run is nothing new. That goes back to fucking old Western movies and other things where it's like, no, we're going to make a stand. We're not going to let these assholes, run us out of town. And that's a very American thought. I'm sure other people around the world have this thought. A few people in the Middle East might agree with this concept as well. But certainly this is a sort of an American Western trope of the idea of like, we're not going to run even though we have an option that's a viable option. It's just that it makes us like, well, what do you think about that? Like, what does it make you feel like? What are they feeling like? What is Sutra feeling like that makes her justify it? Is that a form of narcissism that they deserve that place and they're not going to leave it and they're going to take drastic action to fuck up the whole universe for the sake of protecting that place?
I mean, a simple way of putting it, I guess, would just be stubbornness, but the point is to go deeper than that. There's also, though, the aspect of first step is running, and then the next step is subservience, right? So yes, we can live, but I don't want to feel like some other force is controlling me, not wanting to feel like you're controlled by something. Now, fleeing your home is kind of an example of that, but it's also could be construed as I don't want things to change. I like my life. I've set my life in my routine. This is my life. But then that goes back to control as well, because it's like, these are the things, ritual is a feeling of having control, right? Among other things, it's a feeling like these are the things in my life that I know are going to happen. I have control that they're going to happen. Almost so much that you don't have control because if you don't do them, you freak out.
It's also an interesting parallel to the implication from Picard that if you believe in something, you should be willing to die for it. And that's what he told Soji, and that's what he was trying to instill in Soji, and that's effectively what she's decided to do. She's like, I believe in protecting my people. Sutra and Soji are on board. I'm to different degrees, clearly. Soji's a little bit more unsure about it, but Sutra is doing exactly what Picard said, which is I'm willing to sacrifice. Now, she obviously is willing to call the evil power that says it's going to kill everything, else and protect her. So you could argue she's not in fact sacrificing, but from the perspective of her saying, we're not running, right? We're like not leaving. We know the Romulans are trying to attack us. We're going to fight them, and we're going to call in the big guns to help us fight them because we think it's okay to abrogate whatever moral philosophy we have for the purpose of protecting ourselves. It's you could go back to the argument for or against dropping the nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Did we have to do that or not? Was there a net total benefit? Because one of the arguments being like, we avoided a 1 million man death in the invasion. Who knows? I mean, that's a debate that's been going on for a long time, and this seems to be kind of a version of that they're willing to do
a
it.
very colonial kind of version of that, right? I mean, it's very much about, this is my settlement. You're not going to take my settlement away from me. What in the end? What is moving? I mean, but it's a metaphor, because I'm sure there's groups that are highly migratory. I'm sure there's an equivalent to that. But I mean, what would that mean in a group that they don't live in one spot, where they just go from spot to spot, going where things are they need?
That was an example of the Bedouins and the folks in Saudi Arabia before the discovery of oil. You had mostly groups of people who were perfectly advanced communities, but they were traveling communities.
Right, exactly. And so
that was the lifestyle. It had to be the lifestyle, because once they got oil, they were then able to transform their landscape to not have to do that anymore in terms of buildings and agriculture and other things.
Right. And so they have other things that they're in control of. Being in control of this one spot of land isn't as big of a deal. The whole reason they keep moving on is because there are outside forces that prevent them from staying in one spot. Or that's at least how they chose to handle it. They didn't choose to handle outside forces by overcoming them. They sort of managed them, which is a difference in sort of controlling and managing something. Managing is just kind of going with the flow, but controlling yourself along the way. Not controlling, keeping yourself moving sort of in the way you can go realistically along the way, as opposed to being chaotic about it. Whereas controlling is an attempt to take the forces around you and bend them into, it's the difference between, surfing on a wave and trying to stop waves, So yeah, I don't know what the equivalent in that scenario would be, but it does come back to sort of the idea of being in control of yourself, your environments, having this sort of, like you were saying, this sort of stand over what you have, and a pride thing, I guess, too, I mean, I guess everything can be boiled down to basic human things, like she was saying, is killing just about fear?
Which, of course, is always interesting when those emotions and motivations are manifesting in a synthetic form of life, which is part of the story. Clearly, is there a difference if this person is sort of reacting in a way that you could argue a human would react precisely in this way, and so anyway, we'll see. I think we got to start wrapping things up, but I definitely wanted to double check, see if there's anything left from your notes that you wanted to touch base on.
Actually, I did want to bring up it doesn't have to be anything much, but what's the point of Elnor's whole role in this show? It's just kind of like a way to keep tabs on the Borg cube while the heroes leave. It's like, oh, the heroes have to leave now, but we still want to keep tabs, so let's keep Elnor here just so we have an excuse to keep tabs on this scene. You know what I mean? I don't know. It seems kind of filler, but I don't know. It's not that it's unwanted. I just don't know what its purpose is, other than to sort of hold sort of like the structural side parts of the narrative together,
I'm very interested by that as well. I like the character of Elnor.
Yeah, I do too.
Elnor.
And that's why I wish he was used more somehow.
I would be. We'll see. We'll see. I would not be surprised if Elnor was not, and not just Elnor. Some of these other characters were inserted. Captain Crandall potentially being one of them, because their purpose and their role will become evident in the second season.
Yeah.
And that they're laying the breadcrumbs, Elnor being a larger breadcrumb, because they needed to introduce him and develop a relationship with Picard. This having a joint adventure is one way to do it. So it's quite possible that is the direction they're moving in. On the other hand, it's otherwise that prediction aside, I agree that he's not been the most well utilized, because he's either been sort of standing around in the background or as you say, just sort of serving to help tie some narrative pieces together that probably could have been tied together anyway. I mean, Hugh could have just been doing stuff by himself or with some Borg people. You didn't have to have Elnor there necessarily.
So
because we know Hugh. Going back and forth between Hugh and Picard is fine. There would be nothing wrong with that.
I think it would be cool, yeah, if, like you said, it was sort of set up for next season. I think that would be a cool way to look forward and just kind of tease us with something, and really flesh something out. Gold ones.
Gold ones.
Gold faces.
Gold faces. A golden eye.
Yeah.
That's the theme to GoldenEye.
Keep saving the galaxy, Picard. Oh, yeah.
And then he says, no, that's your job now.
Yeah.
And walks into the sunlight.
Yeah, that's got to be some kind of meaningful thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know what exactly, but it's some kind of, it's got to mark some moment that something changes.
I think, and who knows, maybe they'll subvert it again. I think the Borg cube is going to regenerate or one way or the other, Jerry Ryan. Jesus, why do I keep doing that? seven of 9. Miss Ryan, I really apologize. I do not mean to conflate you with your character, with the popular character you portrayed on Star Trek Voyager and are currently reprising on Star Trek Picard. I do apologize, Miss Ryan. She's just such a good actress.
Yeah.
She really embodies the role.
Awesome.
Anyway, I think that probably with the Borg cube, but one way or the other, her character is going to be really relevant to what goes down in the next episode, presumably. So I don't know. I'm just really interested. So basically, like what I was saying is what keeps happening with the Borg cube is we expect some crazy thing to happen and then it sputters. And then we expect another crazy thing to happen and it sputters again. They've done that twice. So I think they're going to do a third time the charm thing. Is the charm thing. So I think it's going to be now the Borg cube is going to do whatever crazy badass shit it needs to do to help save the day.
Is 7 of 9 going to control it?
She might be controlling it, whatever. Like,
how is she able to see everything? I understand how you can see within your Borg network, but she was like, I could even see Luceranin or whatever it's called.
Because
and
it was
the Snakehead cruiser.
It was because it was in the transwarp conduit.
Oh, they were in the
Borg
transwarp
used.
conduit. That's right. The fucking transwarp conduit. That's how they were able to go 25 or 12 light years in 25 minutes or whatever.
Precisely.
However many light years.
Yeah.
It was a lot of light years in like 20 minutes.
88 miles per hour.
88, because it fills up all the slots on your old school digital clock thing.
Twin Pine Malls.
It's Lone Pine. Lone Pine.
No, it's Twin Pine Mall.
But it became Lone Pine.
No. Which timeline are you in?
On the
timeline. Jesus. There's a bad invention.
Bernstein Bears. That timeline.
Mandela Bears. I told you. That's what they're called, the Mandela Bears.
The Mandela Bears. Another question. I'll try to make these quick. Narek follows them into the thing and then immediately fucking attacks them. First of all, I thought they knew where this planet was because that's why Picard and them went to the planet. They went to the planet to warn them of the Romulans coming. Is that kind of correct?
Okay. Here's how I believe it went down, and I do think it's a little confusing, but this is my recollection when you pull all the pieces apart. Narek has Soji in the Romulan Korean spa. He tricks her into saying 2 blood red moons.
Right, he's like, we got it.
His sister that he has sex with has been monitoring this, and she says, thank you, brother. So she now has that bit of information, but not the location yet.
Right.
Narek... Soji then escapes. Like literally in the next 2 minutes, she's fucking gone.
But Narek was trying to kill her. He wanted her dead.
Yeah. That's irrelevant to this. Soji escapes. Narek gets in a fucking spaceship to go find her because he has the tracking device on the La Sirena, and he figures that they're going to go meet up with her, right?
I think that was the last...
Listen. He is now gone. After he's already left is when, the shit starts going down with the Borg and stuff. And Narissa, whatever happens to Narissa, it hasn't been resolved yet or whatever, but she got that information out. So one presumes that the Romulan fleet was able to figure out the location, but that Narek has been on this chase and not necessarily in good communication. He seems to be doing his own thing, so he may not be aware of it. So that's why he had to follow them through, or he was just trying to stick close to them and then obviously follow them through the transport conduit.
So you're saying basically the Romulan network kind of like has it. They know what it looks like, but they're calculating the location, and Narek just balls out and is just kind of like, I'm not waiting for that. I will say what I was going to say. One part is that thing of him following her. That was definitely like a last second sort of action by virtue of the fact that he was trying to kill her. And
he was also strictly speaking, he was following the La Sirena on the assumption that they would be meeting up with him because he didn't know where she went because she went through the Borg magical thing, right?
He wanted to follow them around.
He wanted to follow the La Sirena because he was smart and figured the La Sirena was going to go pick them up someplace.
But you think that then why would he leave away from Rizzo, his sister, and the rest of the Romulans. What was his motivation then for chasing them down?
Well,
You know what I mean?
he was saying he was still trying to destroy her before she could get back to her people, because presumably if they think she's the destroyer, that's the whole worry, is if she gets back there in time, they're gonna
But she's not really the destroyer. So
he doesn't know that. He thinks she is.
well, I mean, Picard at the end, he goes, "You're the destroyer. You will be the destroyer." And at this point in time, it seems more likely that Sutra is the destroyer.
Yeah, but you're talking narratively. I'm talking about what Narek knows.
Yeah, I was talking about what Picard knows. Based upon what Picard knows, why does he think that Soji's the bringer of the destroyer?
Oh, I thought we were still talking about why did Narek follow the Lacerate.
Oh yeah, we did. I'm sorry, I kind of went on a tangent. Okay, back at the ranch. So sorry. So Narek followed Soji because he knew that they were eventually going to meet up with them. He didn't want to wait around for the Romulans to figure out where they were. Okay, fine. That's what you're basically saying?
Yeah.
And so then they meet up with... So why did he fucking... Like, first of all, that's ballsy move to attack that ship, although he's pretty savvy. But why did he...
His ship was strong.
So he just wanted... And then he found them, then he just wanted to kill them so he could be the planet first, I guess. I guess they did get there all fast on that conduit, so he would have gotten there light years ahead. He didn't,
I think it was just multiple prong...
Yeah.
And with the Romulans, it's no different than Picard. Picard and Soji, they already had the whole moons thing. It wasn't until Captain Crandall told them where it was that they knew where the fucking planet was.
So it would have taken them some time.
Both Picard and the Romulans still had to suss that shit out. And Narek, meanwhile, he's on his own thing, chasing them down. So that's how I read it anyway.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting to see Picard, that whole I love you scene. First of all, is that romantic? Is not. I don't know. You can assume it's not, but you can always open it up for more. But he has a harder time holding his composure. He still holds his composure in this show, but things like that show him to be almost foolish. Even more so than in TNG when he was uncomfortable around children. Even then, he was uncomfortable because he tried to hold so much composure.
Yeah, precisely.
And that's what made it silly. In this, he's like flustered. He's
old and he has a brain disease.
That's true. He does have a brain disease.
I mean, in all good things,
he's more easily flustered now. He was never flustered before.
In all good things, which takes place in a similar time frame, even though obviously it's a made-up future.
Flappable.
But he is, in a similar sense, he's old and all like, and he gets confused about things. And, by the way, we didn't mention, we're going to shut things down in a second, but we didn't mention that one weird thing where after they, where Picard, with the whole flower ship and everything, where Picard like passes out and he's all like, what does he say? Like, welcome, thank you for coming.
He's like, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you all for coming or something.
Yeah.
And we sort of quickly go away from that because he wakes up and you see Girardi and they do the whole thing and he talks about the brain disease, whatever. But what the fuck was that? Like, was that somebody talking through him? Was that his brain disease just making him pass out and say some weird shit?
The only other thing I could think of other than that part is maybe it was like him at his own funeral, like saying thank you for coming or something narcissistic, egotistical, narcissistic like that. I don't know that was what they meant, but it's just, that's what kind of popped. Is like, what if he's like at his funeral talking to people and just saying thank you all for coming? Only Picard would do that or something.
That's a great way to look at it. I don't know. It's just, it was a weird out of place thing that they have not yet explained, and I have a feeling that it will. Something will be explained by that.
Yeah, I hope so. People seem to treat Picard as if he was more arrogant than he actually, I think he was. I mean, I don't think he was really this full of himself in like...
He was always arrogant, but the problem is arrogance takes on different flavors, and in fact, the term ebbs and flows depending on context and situation. And I think Riker said it well in that him acting that way on the bridge of the Enterprise would not seem out of place. It seems like leadership and confidence and all that. But him doing it in your fucking living room is a different story, where you're like, no, I don't want to put it, I don't want to fucking move the speakers over there. I like the couch where it is.
Yeah,
fucking piece of shit. It's like, no, the couch must be sat here, no further.
Yeah.
8 foot from the screen. It's bad for their eyes. It's not, by the way. You can sit right in front of a TV.
Even if the lights are off?
Even if the lights are off. That is an old wives' tale, and it is especially not true with new digital flat panel screens. It doesn't hurt your eyes. Reading is more likely to hurt your eyes. So the lesson there, kids, don't read.
You can't You also can't play Duck Hunt on the new ones.
Yeah,
TVs.
because they don't have the right RGB flip-flop.
Yeah.
Flip-a-doops.
Okay, so the last thing I'll say is at one point, Soji announces the mission, and that's to seek out advanced synthetic life and excise it from the oppression by organics. It's kind of some perverted version of to seek out new life and new civilizations to boldly go where no one has gone before.
Yes,
so I thought
it is,
it follows the same
absolutely.
rhythm.
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, that's an excellent observation that I didn't catch, and I think that's very cool. I'm gonna watch it again and look forward to that part. All right, cool. Well, thank you very much for joining us on this Jesse-less episode of It's Got Star Trek. I think is what we call this show, this
I think
podcast.
so.
It's Got Star Trek.
I keep forgetting
with an apostrophe.
Apostrophe.
Related to the fact that is the name of the show, you can also find us on social media. What's some forms of social media that we're on, Dan?
Malparido. Puto madre.
That's not social media.
That's stuff he said. Well,
did Rio say that?
Yeah, he said puta madre at one point. And then Girardi was like, "Am I your?" No, he said Malparito somewhere else, and then Girardi was like, "Am I your something or other?"
Inigo Montoya?
I think so. You can go to Facebook. Did we mention that?
Yeah. What's the address on Facebook?
www.facebook.com.
No, not Facebook's address. Our It's Got Star Trek business.
You mean other than Facebook?
Including Facebook.
Oh, the whole fucking URL of
No, not the whole URL. Okay.
Okay, there's www.itsgotstartrek.com.
That's a website, yeah.
There's www.itsgoteverything.com/ It's Got Star Trek / episode /
You don't need to give that. You do not need to give that.
Oh, you weren't talking about that.
I was not talking about that. What Dan's partially referring to is that the It's Got Star Trek podcast is a subsidiary of the It's Got Everything podcasting network. Don't go there. You're not going to be interested in
And
this
if there's
other
a
shit.
question mark with a bunch of numbers and shit after it, you can delete that. But it doesn't.
Okay. This is a bizarre turn of events.
Okay. Okay, so you were asking me what's the website for Facebook?
Okay. All right. I'm gonna briefly take the reins back from Dan. and
There's Instagram.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Yes, there's Instagram.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, no. The kids know all about this stuff. All right.
Not TikTok.
Here's the key. @ It's Got Star Trek. The @ It's Got Star Trek.
Oh,
Sometimes
that's
just
what
called
you're going for.
It's Got Star Trek. That is valid when you use that on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. We got them all.
We got
all of those. Now on
fucking
Facebook,
took
you
it.
don't have to bother with that. You can just type in It's Got Star Trek or whatever. You'll find us. Subscribe to our page or whatever. However Facebook works. Teach us. Call us up on the phone.
Loop and subscribe. Yeah, call us on the fucking phone.
Call us on.
Send me a letter.
Tell us how to use Facebook, but or whatever. But anyway, we have a Facebook page. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. You can email us at feedback@itsgotstartrek. Why the fuck is it taking this long to get through all this shit?
Because I fucked it up.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So
there's YouTube.
yeah, you can go to YouTube. You can also just search for It's Got Star Trek on YouTube.
You're insane.
Yeah, if you're one of those insane people. Although I have done it.
Yeah.
I will say,
I understand why people
working
do it.
around the house. I'm cleaning the coffee table and I just pop it on the YouTube because the TV's there. It's got a good sound system. Sometimes you don't got your headphones and your phone handy, so you just pop it on the TV.
Your bonanones.
Yeah.
Your bonophones.
So anyway, we've given you all you need. Get in contact with us. Let us know what's up. Let us know what you think of the Picard show. Anything else about Star Trek. We're a multi-topic show. We're doing Picard right now, but we'll soon be moving on to sort of random topics here and there. We'd love to hear your suggestions for which topics to pursue.
Please, tell us how you feel. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, so I can be defensive about it.
Yeah, we really would be keen. Generally speaking, I can't guarantee this response, but generally speaking, if somebody criticizes something we do, we have childish minds, and our immediate reaction, even if it's self-destructive, is to double down on whatever the negative behavior is. This is a problem, particularly for Dan and I. I think Jesse is not burdened with this particular mental deficiency.
But then we go ahead and encourage people to do that, and then we react to it. I think that's called abuse.
It is a form of but is it abuse of us or the listeners?
I guess everyone involved.
It could be a mutual cyclical kind of thing.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, you tell someone that you want to know the truth, and they tell you the truth, and you call them a piece of shit. I mean, they're like, I didn't ask for this. You asked for this.
That's a fair point. I don't know. How about this? It's like a gamble. You could send it.
It's a gamble.
It's a gamble. You could send us something, and we will respond to it on air. We will, in fact, I don't know. The problem is it's all about incentive structures because you want to get nice reviews, you want to get nice star ratings. And
maybe they've forgotten about the jokes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Maybe that didn't help.
Maybe not. But we want those nice things, but you don't want to incentivize the negative stuff. The negative stuff can be pretty entertaining, though.
With the negative stuff?
Yeah, the negative stuff can be entertaining. The negative reviews.
Oh, you don't want to incentivize people giving us joking. Well, he wasn't. That person wasn't joking, but you're like you don't want people to be silly for silly's sake.
No, but I kind of do, but then I don't. It's it's that old complicated thing.
You don't want it when it comes, when it hurts us.
It's like a reverse psychology kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the whole deal with any of this stuff.
Because you'll know that I'll know that you'll know.
I don't know. We just like hearing from you folks. You guys are really cool, and we've already heard some cool ideas from folks. We want to hear more ideas.
Yes, I want compliments, but criticisms, suggestions, but you have to leave us 5 stars. Then it's harmless for everyone, and we get to only have our emotions hurt, but are constructive about it. That's Dan's position. My position is to only give us 1-star reviews, but really, really nice reviews. Okay.
So I'm going for the opposite.
So then it balances out.
Theoretically,
yeah.
If equal numbers of people.
They call that min-maxing.
Yes, okay. We'd like to min-max the iTunes review because nothing does a podcast better than getting just a straight 2.5 right across.
Right. Oh yeah, right. That big number you look at. Wow.
The aggregate qualitative analysis of the text part of the reviews would result in the term "it's a podcast."
I'm of neutral alignment. I only listen to podcasts that get 2.5 ratings.
Yes, 2.5 and above. Well, no, not above or below. Just exactly 2.5.
I don't want anything positive or negative. I don't want an experience. Basically, I just want to experience nothing.
Oh man, that's some pretty intense shit. Anyway,
it's like the fire at the circus.
What?
Intense.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
I did it. I didn't even
so
need
late
it.
at night. The world is fucking shut down.
Yeah.
Because of some zombie rat virus business. Mm-hmm. And Dan has just ruined my evening.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Anyway, next week we'll be back with etc. What is it? etc. Part 2.
Et in Arcadia Ego Part 2.
You were going into Italian, thought better of it, and switched to some sort of a clown voice.
I was just being me.
Well, we are going to be talking about that particular episode next week.
Errol's Internet. Hey, the Kennedy.
So tune in next week, and we will have a much shorter discussion about that show. I don't know. We'll cut out chunks. So
Overcompensating.
Over butthole sating. So thank you very much.
Over butt pulsating.
Have a good night. We'll talk to you all the following week from now.
We might run into, angry reptiloids out there. Homicidal fungi. It's a thing. Or somebody's asshole Romulan ex. Hot. I think that's the artifact. Good riddance.
We had friends on that thing, though.
Soji, I know time is of the essence, but if by any chance Elnor and Hugh survived...
Something that massive falling that fast? The odds are not good.
Well, hope and the odds make poor bedfellows.
True. Synthville is in the opposite direction.
We could split up. Hugh was my friend, too. Anyway, we should probably stick together. In case we run into any homicidal fungus.
You're watching the British Emergency Broadcasting System. The estimated date is March or November 2013. It's 19 hours. So now, as usual, It's time for the quiz broadcast.
Hello, good evening, and remain indoors. This is the quiz broadcast, coming to you every Friday, the same day as your food parcels. So chow down on a protein fudge, take whatever injections are recommended in your sector, and prepare to enjoy the show. Well, it's between 600 and 750 days since the event, but that hasn't stopped those of us that survive from enjoying ourselves. So let's remain indoors and say hello to our contestants. Hi there. Hello.
Hey.
That's the spirit, unknown male 282. So let's get on with the game. First round, things. Fingers on buzzers. What is believed to be the name of this pre-event leader?
Heston Blumenthal?
Correct. Multiple choice. Which of Shakespeare's 3 plays is now thought to be prophetic of the event? Is it A, Pericles, B, Cymbeline, or C, Boeing Boeing?
Is it a trick question?
It is. Oh dear, some horrible memory from the event, no doubt. We all get them. Yes, indeed. By night, we all get them. Please, everyone, remain indoors. So while Sheena's being electrocured, let's see what Peter's won. That's right. It's fuel.